What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. Happy Halloween. This is a special Halloween edition of the LTRE podcast, and this is a special interview with none other than author Dan Birlew. Yes, we found Dan Birlew, and we had him on the show, an exclusive interview with us. Me and John sat down and talked about all the strategy guides, such as Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy. The list goes on. There's so many strategy guides that this guy wrote, and sitting down to talk with him and ask him questions about certain things that we've always wanted to ask him, as you guys have heard us on the show and several streams in the past about why certain things were written the way they were and everything else that goes into strategy guide writing we cover in the show. He tells us a lot about the industry back then and how it was. This is one of the best interviews we've ever done, and it's 2 hours, so you guys are in for a special Halloween treat. And we hope to have Dan on for another show, and maybe we can follow up on some of those ideas that we pitched during this episode of the podcast. So happy Halloween, everyone. Stay safe, and this is our interview with Dan Birlew.
This is STARS Officer Jill Valentine, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast.
What is going on, everyone?
How's it going, everyone?
We are here with a very special episode of the podcast, very special interview edition of the podcast.
One that I have called for the last 2.5 years.
We've talked about it for
Inevitable.
a long time. It was going to happen eventually.
It was going to happen. I was going to try, even if I had to fly out there. We are here. He said not to say it, so I won't. But we are here with Dan Birlew. Dan Birlew, why don't you give yourself an introduction?
Hey guys, how's it going? Oh man, that's funny. It kind of makes me sound like Moby Dick or something. I didn't know you guys were looking for me. I didn't mean to be elusive or anything.
Hey, you were like a ninja. We couldn't find you.
You were in the Matrix, man.
Yeah, you were in the Matrix for a while. We started looking for like secret maps in your strategy guides to lead us to where you were.
I just couldn't find anything.
Invisible ink and stuff.
Yes.
Oh, but I hit all those clues in there. You guys didn't pick up on my breadcrumbs?
We must have missed them. Yeah, man.
You didn't find the map to the High Castle? No? Okay.
We missed that one.
So for those of you who are listening to this podcast and don't know who Dan Birlew is, Dan Birlew is the man, the myth, the legend. Sorry. He is the guy who wrote a lot of strategy guides from many of our childhoods, including Resident Evil, Resident Evil Outbreak, Resident Evil 4, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy X-2, Parasite Eve, and more.
List goes on and on.
This man has done so much work for us as gamers, and some of it wasn't always easy, which we'll get into in this podcast today. So, Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and just kind of give us a summary of what you've been up to, and then go right into, I guess, how you started writing strategy guides.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, my name is Dan Birlew, as they've been saying. I am 49 years old. I was born just outside St. Louis, Missouri. I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin in 1993. I graduated with a degree in fine arts. I actually wanted to get my degree in acting, and I pursued acting for about 10 years. I auditioned for some really cool directors, including Francis Ford Coppola and Robert Rodriguez and others. And then, I don't know, nothing really came together for me in acting. Meanwhile, I was getting into writing strategy guides by basically just being a gamer, by just being a guy who wanted to play video games every day. I was still living in Austin, Texas for quite a bit of the time, and while I was living in Austin, I had 2 jobs. I would deliver newspapers. I would get up about 3 o'clock in the morning and deliver newspapers, and then I would go to the office and work all day. And on the days when I didn't have to deliver newspapers, I thought it was important to still get up at that hour just so that I could get up at that hour on the days when I did have to deliver. And so when I didn't have to deliver newspapers, I would get up at 3 a.m. and play video games. And we play video games like Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 and a lot of PlayStation games, like Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8. And after I would play those games, I would go to message boards because that's basically what we had back then. This is
Game FAQ.
Yeah.
Never forget.
Yeah.
Game facts. Never forget.
Yeah. So I'm trying to place this around 1996, 97 or so. And then in 1999, we decided to move to Los Angeles to try to really throw some effort into my acting career. When we got to Los Angeles, my now ex-wife actually insisted that I stop getting up at 3 a.m. and playing video games and that I focus on my acting career. Or that I turn it into a career. And I thought, well, shit, I better turn it into a career. So I had been, like you mentioned, GameFAQs. I had been submitting some text-based guides to GameFAQs.com.
Really?
And there's like I wrote things that were mainly opinionated. They were almost like blog pieces, and I posted them on GameFAQs, and they published them. So what the hell?
Oh my
That's awesome.
goodness! I would love to get some links to that afterwards. I'd love to go back and read them. I had no idea.
Yeah, I wrote. So for Resident Evil, I actually wrote a plot guide that kind of just basically sort of went scene by scene through Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2, and it also kind of mentioned like what I felt were definite influences on the Resident Evil series. Like I felt like the Terminator movies were a huge influence.
Oh yeah,
on the Resident Evil series.
I mean, Leon's got John Connor's haircut.
Oh yeah, Night of the Living Dead as well. Yeah, especially Night of the Living Dead remake, like the Tom Savini remake. It's like everything in that that style too. Like it was cool that they kind of took influence from that too. Because then you had like they turned Barbara into like a complete badass in that movie compared to the original. Like little things that Capcom seemed to use in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah, I think I know the one you're talking about. That that Tom Savini one was in the mid 90s, right? Because they've remade
it was actually 1990. Yeah.
Okay.
It was
yeah.
90.
Yeah. I think I even mentioned that, and I might have mentioned that in my guide. But yeah, I felt like that particular movie really kind of influenced like how they made Resident Evil. I also felt like X-Files was a big influence, especially on the files, like the inclusion of all the files and the music. I felt like the original soundtrack to Resident Evil was heavily influenced by the X-Files, because I would even go listen to the episodes and they would have those little chimes in the background and the music and stuff like that, and I was like, holy cow, it's just like Resident Evil. They got a lot of the
kind of gives you the same vibes from that.
Yeah, definitely. So I had been doing that at GameFAQs. I had been sending them little text-based guides, and I was writing one for Resident Evil 2, even though the game had already been out for a year. I figured I could, do it better. So when my ex-wife said that I needed to turn it into a career or stop doing it, I started digging up information on both Brady games and Prima games. I actually found a submission email for Brady games, and I sent them a excerpt of my guide. You know what? I may have mailed it. I may have literally written out. Yeah. I think I wrote out a cover letter, and I printed out a section of my guide, and I mailed it to them. And I think I got called out of the blue by their acquisitions editor just within a couple weeks, because this was just a couple weeks after I moved to LA. And she said, her name was Deborah. I'm forgetting her last name at the moment. Maybe I'll remember it later. And Deborah said, I've been feeling a little sick lately, and so it may be my cold and my fever speaking, but I think I want to hire you to write the Resident Evil 3 guide. And I was like, holy crap, okay, yeah,
Oh,
whatever you want, I'll do it. So they contracted me for just the one book, Resident Evil 3, and then they told me everything I needed to do in order to capture screenshots from it. They sent me a blue PlayStation, which is a test kit. It's
That's awesome.
Awesome.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So
Do you still have that PlayStation?
Oh no, I had to send that back when I was done with the
Oh,
project. Yeah,
okay.
no, yeah, we couldn't keep anything. We couldn't keep the ROMs. We couldn't keep like any if we got digital files, we had to confirm deletion of those and anything like that. Yeah, we had to.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we couldn't keep any of the assets or anything like that. Those things had to be returned to the developer. They had like inventory numbers on them. I don't know how. I mean, we made sure to be very careful on our end about inventory. We certainly didn't want to make the developers mad. And yeah. So so she contracted me to write just the one book, Resident Evil 3. So I had to go buy like a video card capture system. I had to upgrade the RAM in my PC. I had to spend all this money. My ex-wife was kind of going crazy. She was trying to use the money to buy furniture.
How was the capturing what did you use?
About to ask, what the hell did you use back then?
Oh my goodness. So I think, I went through a string of capture cards. Because you'd buy one and it was garbage and you couldn't return it because you'd opened it. Back
in the dark days.
Yeah, I think the first thing I did was kind of it was like a kind of plug-in device. It was really, really bad. And so I think it was I'm thinking Zippy. I don't even know if I'm thinking of the name right. And so it was really... It was cheese bag, in my opinion. It was really terrible tech, and so I took it back, and I went back to the store. And I mean, at this point, I was going to Comp USA. I don't know if you remember Comp USA. So I went in there, and I was like, "What do I need to do to get a high quality capture on my computer?" So I think they gave me an ATI video card, and then I had to get a bunch of adapters, in order to get the connection from the PlayStation into the computer capture card. And then at that point, I think I could just basically open a window on the computer and I could just start recording video. So then I started recording video, and probably about 45 minutes into the game, I filled my hard drive, because back then the hard drive that came in your computer was garbage. I think the hard drive that was in my computer at the time was a 32 megabyte hard drive.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That sounds about right.
And it's probably recording at a really
Windows
low resolution
95.
too.
Yeah. The resolution was only 320. 320 by 240, and I filled up my hard drive. So I had to go buy I had to go buy an external hard drive. And I came back and I kept recording the game, and then I filled up that hard drive and I had to go get another hard drive. I was sweating. I was oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm totally winging it.
Oh wow, that's really so. Resident Evil 3 that's my favorite game of the whole series of all time, is the original Resident Evil 3. That's pretty cool. That was your first run at doing it as a full career.
Yeah, that's really cool too. He was explaining earlier when he said when Dan, I'm talking about him like he's not here. But Dan, when you said that right around that era when you were on GameFAQs, you dropped Resident Evil 2 and Final Fantasy 8 and stuff like that, and those are my two favorite games of all time.
Oh yeah, I love those.
So that's really telling for those 2 years, 98 and 99. How great video games were back then.
So good.
It's such an era that's just it's gone.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there was
some magic going on there. It was a special time.
It was. It really was. I mean, we were getting Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8. We got Silent Hill in 99 and Metal Gear Solid right before that, and those games were just phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 8 was released on 9/9/99.
Oh, I didn't know that. I bought it a little bit after it came out.
The max hit in the game, 9/9/99. Well, I think in Final Fantasy VIII they raised it to 99,000. But yeah, it's just crazy that you worked on so many things, especially from my childhood. I mean, you too, basically. Maybe not the Final Fantasy part of it, but everything else that he has here, everything else he touched, bro. We played the hell out of before we knew each other.
Yeah, it was a golden age for adventure games. Absolutely. We were coming out of things like Alone in the Dark and D, I think the D series was a big one, like these gothic kind of like computer games where you're just kind of pointing and clicking at stuff, or like Diablo 2, isometric.
Yeah, you talked about Diablo 2 the other day.
Yeah. Yeah, Diablo's
I have a question, just because we got to set the record straight. Dan, what is your favorite video game of all time?
Oh, my word. I think, I think Metal Gear Solid 3 is literally one of the best video games I ever played. And
So good. That's definitely the best in the series, in my opinion. That was Snake Eater so good.
It was so good.
Love
and when we were working on the strategy guide for that one, we were losing our, pardon me, but we were losing our shit like every other day. We were like,
you were completely allowed to curse, Dan.
Yeah,
you
you're
said
fine.
so much worse. We said so much worse.
Doug Walsh and I both had to travel to Indianapolis because Hideo Kojima himself was like very serious about the security on that disc, and Brady Games was not allowed to let the disc off of their property.
Wow.
I believe it.
Yeah, and so we had to travel to Indianapolis, and we had to stay in Indianapolis for the duration of the project.
That is so
That
cool.
actually must have been, though, I mean, it was probably stressful, but that seems like kind of fun. Be like, oh, yeah, they'll pay us just to, like, go out here and write this guy.
Oh yeah, it was. It was so much fun. Yeah, Doug and I would spend most of our day like playing the game in the office and capturing it. Sometimes we do it in the hotel room if we were a little bit behind, but then some nights we just like go to a sports bar and we watch like oh my God, I think that was the year the White Sox won the series, and like, or was it the Red Sox? I'm not a baseball guy. I forget.
They both wear socks. It doesn't matter. Either way.
Yeah, but it was like a legendary thing. Like there was this curse that like the White Sox were never going to win. And I remember we were working on the Metal Gear Solid 3 guide, and we watched that game where they won the World Series. That was amazing. But anyway, we were working on Metal Gear Solid 3, and I was just losing it because Metal Gear Solid 2 was a very confusing game. And it was a confusing project to work on, too. But Metal Gear Solid 3 was just like the comeback of the century, in my opinion. That game just blew all the other Metal Gear Solid games out of the water. And
That's amazing.
They didn't
I mean,
make anything better in that sense, yeah.
So I guess it would be safe to say that might be one of the best threequels in gaming history. The third.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I would put that up there, I guess, with like Crash 3.
I mean, technically the fifth, right?
Yeah, technically.
Yeah, I remember getting Metal Gear Solid 3 and the guide that year for Christmas, and I remember looking at the guide because my mom got it for me, and it was the biggest guidebook I've ever seen. Like how stacked that thing was, just so like at the time, like I remember just being like, wow. Like,
was that Birlew's guide?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Put effort. Holy shit. He was like, I'm gonna make it thick, boy.
It was like the because then after that I got like the GTA guides, and they became like just as big and like just content, but there was so much in there that I just remember at the time I was like, it just blew my mind. I was like, there's so much in this game. You just knew that you were getting yourself into like an actual experience of a game.
That was what games were like back then, dude.
Yeah.
I remember when you used to get a new game and you used to put it in. Even like, I know we're not, I'm 26. You're what, 24 now?
Turning 25 in February.
You're turning 25 in February. It's like, obviously we weren't around for like the 80s.
Right.
So like we didn't experience the Pongs and stuff firsthand. Like we've gone back and played them. But, and I sound like a boomer when I say this, but like modern day gaming is just not the same. The internet has ruined so much. It's also created so much. Like we would never have Dan Birlew on this podcast if
we couldn't reach out.
If we couldn't reach out and find him, we'd have to go become strategy guide authors and then meet him in the Crossfire.
We'd have to follow the map in the back of the book.
Yeah, we'd have to follow the map. Yeah, but it's also like the games just aren't the same. Now they're trying to get you to pre-order digitally to get content. Strategy guides are almost non-existent in America.
Oh, they all went out of business. Yeah, both Brady Games and Prima Games are out of business. I think the only one left is Piggyback, and I haven't seen a Piggyback. I haven't even seen a strategy guide merchandised on a video game website in like 2 years or more.
Yeah, Nintendo is the only one still doing them. Their first party Nintendo guides are the only ones I see on the shelf. Like the Pokemon strategy guides, like Pokemon Company obviously is a separate company than Nintendo.
I last
but-
saw in 2018. I saw Red Dead Redemption 2 is the last strategy guide I ever saw Best Buy sell.
Oh, wow.
Ever.
Yeah, literally
And that
the
was
last
it.
one.
It was a hardcover one.
And I got
that had
the
all
Dark Souls 3
collectibles.
guide
Yeah,
before that,
and then
too,
that was
which
it.
From Software published.
Yeah.
It's like if the publishers don't do it, it's like crazy. I just wish they'd come back because they're so cool.
They are. So,
Yeah,
they are. They
yeah.
were a lot of fun to make, and we really tried. I think when we were making these books, I mean, like, you know, between the publishers and the writers and myself, our goal was to create like a compendium of knowledge, so that you could not only like get through the game, but you could also replay it, and you would understand like everything there possibly was to know about the game. A lot of times, though, like we faced some opposition about that. We had some opposition from the game developers because they wanted the licensed product, right? They wanted they wanted us to license the strategy guide rights from them, and they wanted to get those royalties. But a lot of times they were like worried about us spoiling elements of their game, even though it was kind of an illogical fear because the game was going to be out at the time that our guide would come out, and we wouldn't be spoiling anything really. But you know, they felt like they needed certain things omitted from the guide, and they did. And you know, I've actually read like a lot of Japanese strategy guides too over the course of my career, because a lot of times the Japanese guide would come out before the English version of the game would come out, and so we get the Japanese guide, and they would.
Do you read Japanese?
Quite a bit. I'm really good with katakana. I'm pretty good with hiragana, and in reading kanji and going through video games, you learn really quickly to identify things like lightning, fire, wind, earth, you know, especially with like, you know, magic games, and words like, you know, zombie, and, you know, you start to identify like words and stuff like that. So I could figure out quite a bit of it, but we did use translators. We actually work with some pretty big translators in the video game industry, like Jeremy Blaustein, who basically wrote the English version of Metal Gear Solid, the original Metal Gear Solid game.
Wow.
He was our translator on quite a few of our guides, so he would get documents and he would translate them, and we would use that information in the book, especially like with regard to like the path situation. There was like in Resident Evil 3, there was I was really kind of sweating Resident Evil 3 because of the Nemesis encounters, and I kept going back and like replaying certain sections of the game over and over again just to see if I could get Nemesis to appear somewhere else at a different time, because as I was replaying the game, things were different, and I would just...
There's a lot of random stuff in that game.
Yeah.
Like, so random.
Yeah. And they didn't... I guess this gets into our next question about like how much contact do you have with the game developers, but like they didn't give you like a event flow chart or anything?
A lot of times what came first was the game, and we would start with the game, and then I would write questions. I would email them to the editor, and the editor would send them to the software company and try to get them answered. But the actual game developer, we were pretty isolated most of the time from the actual game developer.
Okay.
If we did have any contact with the actual game developer, it was very late in the process. Like, for instance, on the Resident Evil GameCube guide, like we wrote like a complete guide for the Resident Evil remake on GameCube, but then we got word back that like Shinji Mikami himself was upset that there was going to be a strategy guide, because apparently apparently there wasn't like an early strategy guide in Japan. That's what they would do. They would print an early strategy guide which was incomplete, and then in the back of the book was a coupon to get a discount off the full guide.
Oh no!
Yeah. DLC in a book.
DLC in the 90s.
Yeah, that was how they would do it in Japan, because
I never knew that.
Yeah, because
I didn't either.
they would face the same kind of censorship that we did, in that the game company didn't want certain elements of the game to appear in the licensed product, and it was always a head scratcher. It was always like, don't they understand that we are basically licensing the right to expose the game to the public? And it was just a back and forth all the time. It was kind of this like ledge that we were sort of walking on all the time with them. It was this real kind of, I say corporate driven lack of understanding, because there was like such an effort among the game developers to kind of keep the game under wraps, keep it hidden, only leak what they wanted to leak. They definitely didn't want to leak surprises, like if one character appeared in another game or something like that. And there were things that we just had to take out. The company would just come back and there was like, you're not allowed to mention this part of the game at all. And
I have a question.
Like, holy cow. Go ahead.
Do you have an example of when that happened to you?
Well, I was just talking about the Resident Evil Remake guide, so that's easy to go back to.
Okay.
They pretty much, so we wrote a complete version of the book, and they pretty much wanted us to take out all the boss fight strategies.
Really?
So the original boss fight I remember that the original boss fight strategies that I wrote do not appear in that guide.
Who wrote them?
Oh, no. They, like, the full version didn't appear in the guide.
Okay.
It was heavily edited, and it was almost incomplete compared. I think the only boss fight that actually made it into the book was the yawn fight, because I think that's like the giant snake in Resident Evil.
Yeah, that's one of the...
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the first boss in there, and so they allowed us to leave that full strategy, but then the rest of the strategies, like if you...
So they cut it down.
Yeah,
wow.
if you go to the final... I want to say T-Rex. What was it called? Those big zombies. The one at the end.
The Tyrant.
Yes, thank you. The Tyrant at the end of Resident Evil. We had a much better. I had like a full strategy for that, including like I even like threw in some tips about how to use a knife if that was all the ammo you had at this point. And,
wow.
Yeah, so that was like a complete strategy to get through that entire thing. And I played that boss fight over and over again to get all that. And I remember what appeared in the book was not nearly what we put into it. And frankly, that was kind of, I mean, sometimes we could like write a guide and we could send it to them and they'd have no corrections at all. And in those cases, I would actually go back and ask, did they even read it? Because we were so used to getting the edits. We were so used to getting things stricken from the books by the game developers that they thought would be spoilers, even though, the book was not going to be out until the same day as the video game.
Yeah, no one would actually read it until they picked up the game.
Right. These are the important questions that we've been burning to ask.
Yeah,
because like
this is inside stuff that
somebody could hold this strategy guide and be like, "Man, Dan Birlew, what a lazy bastard, dude! Didn't even include boss strategies." Then you find out Capcom's the reason why he didn't.
We never knew this,
and we never knew that
until you just said that.
And that's why
crazy.
we wanted to do this interview, because it's just one of those things. Like, at some point with everything that's happened, you hold it up and you just go, Resident Evil, official strategy guide, the signature series by Brady Games, written by Dan Birlew, and now all the way in 2020, you have to look at that and go, how much did Dan Birlew do on his own, and how much did they tell him he couldn't do? Because now, as an adult looking back, it's like you're looking through these strategy guides and you're like,
and there's people editing everything.
Are these the words Dan wrote, or did his editor change this, or did like what happened?
Or they were telling you to edit stuff down,
and now they're like, you can't include strategies against the bosses. Get out of here!
Like if you like you said you wrote one for a knife strategy, that would have been amazing for fans, because you know how many fans now. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people love doing knife runs on these games and finding knife strategies, and that would have been amazing to have that in there.
Yeah, that was what I loved about Resident Evil, because we were sharing that kind of information on message boards, like I said, and as soon as I saw somebody post that you could get through the whole game with just the knife, I was like, bullshit. And so I started up a new game, and I played the whole thing with the knife, and I was like, oh my God, you can literally get through this whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we've managed to clear a lot of knife runs on the channel, actually.
Yeah,
so far.
Awesome.
We're trying to get some more.
I'll have to go
track record.
I'll have to go see those. That's awesome. Yeah, and I used to.
We just at 0. Oof, that was so brutal with the Bat Boss. Don't even get us started with the Bat Boss, Dan. I'm telling you, it was a nightmare.
Until this day, there has not been a single person who has beaten hard mode knife only in Resident Evil 0. It's impossible.
We didn't even do it. We had a drop set difficulty because it was bad.
It's impossible to beat the bat with a knife with on hard mode. The game doesn't give you enough healing items.
Oh, wow. I never tried. I think at that point I was far enough along that I was just like, well, screw it. I'm never going to get a knife mode strategy into a book, so I don't think I was even trying at that point.
Right.
You know? And yeah, there were things like I wanted to cover like hard difficulty, but we were limited to normal difficulty. So we always had
Really?
we always had to stipulate that we were playing the game on normal with with just that set of like weapons or that difficulty or that kind of thing, and we weren't allowed to cover hard. So then sometimes we would find out that there were differences in hard mode. Like sometimes there were differences in like monster appearances or item appearances, and we'd that would just be a surprise to the player. So.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, my intent was that the books be fully inclusive, that you could I wanted to write a book that you could go back to like now, like 20 years later, and you could pick up like one of my books and you could say, oh, wow, you can get through the whole game with just a knife or something like that.
Yeah.
Or, oh, wow, you can get through the whole game in an hour and 5 minutes. I want to see if I can beat that, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something to go back to. Like, as far as like the process behind like a lot of the game, was there like a time when you were trying to make one of these strategy guides and you just felt like, man, I'm just like feel like I'm losing my mind with some of these edits? Like, was there one that it was like really challenging to make?
Yeah, which guidebook did you write that you thought was the most difficult?
Okay, so like as far as like the edits that were made to the book, that's the difficulty you're talking about?
Well, I guess there's a two-part question. I think Anthony's asking kind of like which book was the hardest to write.
Right.
And I think also to tack on to that, after you answer that question, which guidebook, when you got the edits back that the developers wanted you to take out, was the most heartbreaking?
Oh, I'd have to say Final Fantasy IX, of course.
Oh, no. I know exactly the guide you're talking about.
Yeah.
I own it.
Yeah. So you guys want the story on that one? Or is that like too off topic?
Yeah, no,
for
you can
Resident
tell the
Evil
story.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was totally stoked to write a Final Fantasy guide because I had played 7 and 8, and every chance I got, I was telling somebody at Brady Games, I love Final Fantasy. I want to write Final Fantasy books. So then I got contracted to write 9, and I was over the moon. So I think I was about to start that at the holidays.
As a side note, real quick, I know a lot of fans love 7, but if you look deep enough, Final Fantasy IX is the fan favorite. A lot of people say that it's the best Final Fantasy game ever made. It's all inclusive because it was the last game that the creator Hironobu Sakaguchi actually worked on.
It was a phenomenal game to play. I was at the end of that game. I was in absolute tears. I was destroyed. I love Final Fantasy IX to this day.
Continue with your story.
Okay. Well, so I was so stoked to have the contract for it. I think it was around the holidays, so I was sort of going into the holidays. And then my editor calls me and he says, "So Dan, we have to have a little talk. There's been something going on, and you kind of need to know about with regard to Final Fantasy IX." So Squaresoft, because that was their name at the time.
Yep.
Squaresoft does not want us to publish a strategy guide. They want us to give them the guide for free, and they want to post it for free on their website, Play Online.
What?
And I said, that is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that they are trying to do to you, and I hope that they don't go through with that. But if you need to cancel the contract, I understand, and it makes me really sad because I was really hoping to write a Final Fantasy book. And he said, he just said, okay, yeah, I'll let you know. So then, not too long, like either days or just a week later, he called me back. He said, all right, so here's what's going to happen. There's been a lot of arguing and wringing of hands, but we are going to publish a limited guide with links to their website. So the full guide will be on their website, and what we publish will be a limited guide. And I said, oh, that sounds horrible. so what do you think? Are you going to be able to charge for this book? Like, what are you going to charge for it? And they go, oh, the normal price. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. You're going to charge people full price for half a strategy guide. And then you expect them to go to a website to get the rest of it. And they were like, yeah. So I actually kind of...
I'll never forget it. Right at the bottom of the strategy guide, it says, enhanced by Play Online.
Yeah, that's right. It was not enhanced. It was antonym day, so we were looking up antonyms for what we actually meant. But yeah, so I actually, I wasn't really thinking as a team player, and I said, listen, if you want to go through with this, that's cool and everything, but I would really like it if you would take my name off the book. And then they got really upset. And the reason is because they felt like I had written some quality guides for them already, like Vagrant Story and Parasite Eve 2, and they wanted to attach my name to the book. And I was like, well, listen, I mean, I don't want my name to be on like a shitty book.
A shitty book, yeah.
Yeah.
And Vagrant Story, I don't own that guide. I didn't know you wrote that. But is another really intensive story-driven game. Yeah. Where it's very hard to wrap your head around what's going on in your first playthrough. And if they let you do that one without this online enhanced bullshit, what the fuck, bro?
Yeah, that doesn't really...
Yeah. Oh, Final Fantasy 9? No, you get online enhanced. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's...
Oh, man.
And
that makes me so sad.
That's crazy.
But, they got a little angry with me, and so there were some talks, and I don't know, it was kind of implied that I sort of needed to take one for the team. So I let them. I just said, you know what, go ahead, put my name on it. I'll just hide out.
Damn.
and
I'll just hide out.
Yeah, no, seriously. And so then then that guy
day,
dropped, and like people were threatening to set me on fire and run me over the street.
No.
That's what happened back then. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember the online Final Fantasy forum where people were complaining about the strategy guide because they were like, "Why did I spend this much money?" And I remember there was a guy who posted a video, and this is back in like 2000. There was a guy who posted a video of him burning his guidebook in his backyard.
Oh, that's sad. Poor dude.
And it wasn't. I don't think it was towards you, but I think it was a guy. Dude, he was just like, "This is what I think," and it was just a video. Like basically, he was Redditing before Reddit was a thing. I feel so bad.
I feel bad for him. Poor dude. That's terrible, but I understand. I just want you to know that I completely understand the idea of burning that book.
Hey, you know what, Dan? You know what? In the end,
you're setting the record straight right now.
You're not only setting the record straight, but in the end, they went out of business. So I guess they should have fought harder for you to be able to write your full guide, bro.
Yeah, it's a game that you actually adored, like something that you cared about.
And I'm going to be honest with you. I think that was I think that Final Fantasy IX was my best strategy guide. I think that because I played like some of those, like I remember playing some of those bosses over and over again because I felt like like the fight was too tough, and I was like, "There's got to be an easy way to fight this boss." So I would fight them again and again. I would go back to the last save. I would fight the bosses over again until I found what I felt was the cinch. And the cinch was like, I mean, what I'm talking about. So the cinch was like a term we used. The cinch was something that is basically like the gimme. Like if you had a zombie and you figured out that you could throw potions at them and kill them, that was the cinch, right? Okay, so like I was looking for like just the right spell or just the right summons or something like that to throw at this boss to make it easier for the player.
I'm pretty sure, Dan, in your Final Fantasy X guide, you talked about how you can throw Phoenix Downs on the undead dragon in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I remember that.
So I know exactly what you're talking. Not that I'm trying to cut you off. I'm just super excited because this is like the shit.
Yeah,
strategy guides are, what do you always say? A snapshot in time.
Yeah,
they're never going to be the same, if at all. And it's so interesting that there's so much that you had to omit. Like, why would
And
they
you got
not
to deal
want...
with the industry too.
The industry,
you
man.
got to deal with the people that are.
And don't even get me started on the strategy guides that didn't include posters. Don't even get me started.
All about the poster guides.
So, would you say that Final Fantasy IX was the hardest one to write for you, or would you say that there was a different guide that you really struggled? Like, was there ever a time you wrote a guide for a game that you didn't like?
Oh God, yeah.
Oh no, he was so quick on the draw. He's like,
Care
oh,
to name
yeah.
a few?
Let me tell you. Let me tell you about Hubert.
Give me. I can't move my microphones. Give me just a quick second, okay? To go over to my shelf.
Oh, he's got it on the shelf.
Oh, he's got the shelf right here.
All right, so I do remember a story. So in 2006, I actually switched from Brady Games to Prima Games, and they assigned me to write a guide for a NFL Madden coaching game.
Oh no!
And it was the clearest miss as far as like assignments. I mean,
oh no!
So yeah, I can't remember what it was, but
NFL coach.
Yeah, yes, it was something like that. So I had played Madden, and Madden is pretty intuitive. I mean, it's really not that complicated of a game to control. So I thought that if it was anything like Madden, that I could come up with something good. But they sent me that game, and the game is about standing on the sideline and cheering on your team. And I was just, I was like, this is the worst video game I've ever played in my life. I mean, I'm sure that there's some football guy wannabe armchair coach who thought that was the best game ever made, but it was literally the worst experience.
His name was Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Did they charge $59.99 for that?
They did.
Oh, no.
I know
Oh, my
exactly
God.
what
Or $49.99.
I know which
I don't know.
game you're talking about,
Oh,
Dan,
man.
because my stepdad bought it and literally threw it in the trash can.
That's what I felt like. I had just started at Prima Games. They had assigned me Splinter Cell, but the problem is that Splinter Cell, when we got it, it was in pieces. And then Ubisoft came back to us and said, we are going to delay the game for a couple months, and
That's where it started.
We're gonna change a lot of things, so we need you to scrap whatever you've put together because we're gonna send you a new game. And that was cool. But I needed something else to write during that time in order to fulfill my quota on books for that year. So they sent me Madden coach or something like that. And the point of the game was to coach you call the plays. You don't even watch the play happen, I don't think. You're basically just watching yourself on the sideline while the game is happening.
It's
and you
literally
have to,
a Madden simulator.
Yes, that is. You're basically trying to be
pick the
John
play,
Madden, I think.
And it just happens again.
Yeah. Madden was a coach, right? So I think you're trying to be John Madden is what it is.
He was a player and a coach and an owner.
The road to John Madden.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was like pretend to be John Madden. And I think that they completely missed the point of what people who like Madden actually like about Madden. So that game, I quit. I quit that game. I just called up my editor. I said, I absolutely cannot write this guide. I'm so sorry. I tried. Can you please send me something else? And they were like, you know what?
Wow.
We got the version of Splinter Cell for the Xbox, so you can Xbox 360. So you can get started.
You're probably so much happier to play.
Oh my God, yes.
I thought they were going to be like, you know what? We played it too, Dan.
We played it too. We don't blame you.
We would not like to play.
We would not like to play that game.
Wow. They understood. They were very like, yeah, we don't play these kind of games in the office either. We don't really think this game is going to sell many guides, so we don't blame you. So yeah, we just send it back to us. We'll try to get somebody else assigned to it, and you can keep working on Splinter Cell. And I was so happy.
That's amazing. As far as like the time that you had like with the game, obviously unless there was like delays, like how much time did you generally have with a game while you were writing it?
Oh, anywhere from 1 week to 3 weeks.
Okay, so it was like a short
Crunch
amount of
time.
time, like less than a month.
Yeah, like Silent Hill 2, I had to write in a week and a half.
What?
And that's like
Are
your
you
life. Like
kidding
you
me?
live and breathe that stuff to get that done. Like at
You
that
wrote
point.
Silent Hill 2's strategy guide in a week and a half.
That's absolutely correct.
That's
Oh my God! These people are asking the impossible.
Oh yeah. I mean, I pretty much. I mean, I worked from home, and I basically lived on candy and Red Bulls, and
I was literally just about to say, how many midnight trips to this convenience store did you take?
Oh, plenty. Although, actually, I was still married, so my wife would go out and buy a bunch of stuff and bring it back. I literally would not leave my office for and she would even, sometimes she would come in and she would wave her hand in front of her nose and be like, "Oh my God, how many days have you been in here?"
Damn.
That's what was the candy of choice?
Yeah, I've got to know.
Oh, geez. I was a big Skittles addict for a long time, so I'm going to say that Skittles was in there, and
Taste the rainbow.
Yeah,
Skittles and Red Bull.
I would basically,
Skittles and Red Bull.
And I would drink Red Bulls. I would drink Coke. I was real big on Coke Zero. In fact, I still keep Coke Zero around, but more just for my heartburn and stuff. But yeah, I was drinking a lot of Coke and Red Bull and eating a lot of candy, and I was working 16 to 18 hours a day, sleeping about 4 hours a day. And then when it came time for the guide to if we were slamming into a deadline, I just flat out stopped sleeping. There were some weekends where I literally just didn't sleep, and by the Monday morning of my deadline, I was almost sick.
Wow.
I basically my brain couldn't function. It was all I could do.
I don't even want to look at a screen for another week.
Well, see, the thing is all of that trial and tribulation that you went through, Dan, I bet you could pick up any of those games and just beat them.
Maybe. Man, it's been a long time. It's been 8 years since I wrote a strategy guide. So,
do you go back and play some of the games that you wrote? Do you go back and play them?
You know what? I actually did go back and play Metal Gear Solid 3 just 2 years ago. I think on PlayStation 3 when they re-released it. Yeah. So I bought it again on PlayStation 3 and played it again, and it was different because they added in a much better camera angle. In the original version, it was top down, and you had to hide up against something in order to see around a corner. And then they added in basically a 3D swivel camera, kind of
because now they had the 16:9 aspect ratio, so they changed the aspect ratio, I guess, and they had to make the camera, I guess, accommodate that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
What is there any unique conveniences or challenges when writing guidebooks, especially the Resident Evil ones, in comparison to other games? Which games were flowed naturally for you when you were writing? Did you get into a rhythm for Resident Evil where it was I know what the fans want, I know what to do, so I'm going to write in a certain style? And also, did you change the style of your writing depending on the game?
Oh yeah. I would totally try to pull in some of the attitude of the game into the guide, so that people could basically read what they were sort of seeing in the game. That was
experiencing at the same
idea.
time.
Yeah. So I would write some things, and I would even write some extra text to try to sort of capture the spirit of the game at that moment. But I try not to do it too often because then it becomes spam almost. So it's oh, what is he talking about now? I really don't know. But so I really did try to shape each guide. As far as flow, I definitely want to say, I don't want to say the Resident Evil guides were, the Resident Evil guides were easy to write because they just sort of flowed out easier because of me being a fan to start with. But as far as playing them and stuff, I would replay them ridiculous amounts of times just to make sure that there wasn't a variance or something like that. That whole thing with the dog up at the beginning of Resident Evil 4. Mm-hmm. I didn't save the dog. I think I accidentally shot it the first time I was playing the game, and then I was like, oh shit. And then I got most of the way through the game and I recorded it that way. And then I got to that boss fight and there was no dog in that big. There was a big giant. You had to fight a big giant in an
the
arena.
El Gigante.
And he didn't have that distraction because when he's distracted, it's a hell of a lot easier.
Because the good boy comes and fights.
He fights for you.
Yeah. And then we got documentation, and I saw something like that in Japanese in the documentation, so I literally replayed the entire game from the beginning just so I could get the dog into the game.
It did, as far as with Resident Evil, because you have a history with it, did you have like a particular game that's your favorite?
Oh man, I really loved Resident Evil 4. That was just a blast. That was just awesome. And you know what? You know what's so weird is I really didn't like Resident Evil 6.
I mean, that's not so weird.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
a lot of people in the
That's not
community
weird.
will not disagree with you, and we just thought it was, for us, like our opinion of it. Like me and John recently played it when we were doing a lead up to RE3 remake, and it was just, there was just so much going on. It was a really like bloated game. There was just too much, I think, that they were trying to kind of like cater to.
Sure,
like,
sure,
so many
yeah.
different audiences.
Obviously, they were trying. So I think they killed Wesker in 5, right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
did.
And then so like in Resident Evil 6, they were trying to like add a whole new generation spin to it or something like that. And they had like the 4 scenarios. They could have just had one and they could have focused, but I felt like the 4 scenarios were just all repeating each other. Basically, it was just the same thing
and
over
you
and over
rehash
and
the
over.
boss fights too. Yeah, like you're playing the same boss fight that Chris, when you play as Jake, because Jake is in the same vicinity as Chris
And
so
Leon.
instead of summoning, and Leon, so instead of summing it up in a cutscene, let's just make the player play this boss battle again, and try to beat it again. And it's like it was just tiring.
And then you play as Ada.
And then you play as Ada, but then at that point, like, do you even care by the
No,
time you
you
unlock
don't
her
even care.
thing? But she's like a fan favorite, so it's like you feel obligated to play
You're
it.
like, oh, Ada?
But you're tired by that point. You're
Yeah.
like, oh my god, this is crazy.
Yeah, I definitely think we're very divided on RE6 as a community, but I think that the tone of the game was the best with Leon and Helena.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
Less action.
the story and the writing and the character interactions were really good for Sherry and Jake. And Chris and Piers' section is just bad. Like, it's just bad.
Yeah.
It is.
And it's just like, it wasn't fun
You're getting
because
shot on the rooftop.
it was almost like,
and-
we've talked about this,
just-
me and Anthony.
I had the biggest grin on my face throughout the Chris and what was his name? What'd you say?
Pierce.
Pierce, thank you. Yeah, I just had a big grin on my face. I was just thinking about Top Gun the whole time and all the latent homosexuality I felt like was going on there. I just thought it was hilarious. I
I'm glad that you said
I thought
that
it was so
because-
funny. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I was like, Leon's scenario was so much better.
I thank you for saying that, Dan.
Yeah, that's
Thank
just my
you,
personal
because
opinion.
it's the truth. Leon's section is better.
It's the best part of the game, I would
It's the
say.
best part
Yeah.
of the game. Not that the other parts are bad. The other thing,
Jake's
other
one of my
reason why-
favorites, but you know,
Jake is really good
yeah.
too. I really do like that. I don't like the section with the weird mansion house or the motorcycle sequence,
That's a little
but
odd.
the snow place is great.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with 6 as a whole, which this isn't a 6 podcast, so we'll move on after this, but I think the problem with 6 is it felt like you were playing 4 different games.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Identity Crisis was basically what I felt.
Identity
with that
Crisis
game.
is a perfect way to sum it up.
And you mentioned Resident Evil 4 being your favorite. I remember getting the guide and using your guide to play through it for the first time, and that was part of my experience with such a different Resident Evil experience. But it was like, it became like one of the most like memorable moments in my whole gaming run was with that guidebook in Resident Evil 4 and beating it like 20 something times that summer and everything like that, thanks to your guidebook. And
Awesome.
it was just like, that was always just a fond memory. Resident Evil 4, now with it talks of it being remade, you know, I think it's really going to be a big wave of people that never experienced it before will be able to play it. But I think just, it's crazy that Resident Evil 4 is just on so many people's top list. It's just, even if you don't like Resident Evil, you can't not like Resident Evil 4 because it's such a great game and so many levels.
yeah, it was awesome. You know, when I got the initial version of the game, okay, and first of all, big shout out to Capcom because they basically left. So it was, like I said, we could find debug controls in a lot of the ROMs that we were getting, and they left a. So there was like a control scheme for freeze frame, so I could literally like, you know, kick a zombie in the face and then freeze frame and take a perfect screenshot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
static
that's how I
camera.
got static camera. I got so many of the screenshots in the book that way and I remember that, and it was just such a, I want to say like a godsend. I'm not even sure that's the right word. That was just amazing that I could just like freeze the game at any point I want and take a perfect screenshot. But when I first got it and I was first playing it and I got to that first village, I got my butt kicked and I was like, holy cow. this is a real difference from the whole 3D camera stuff, like from Code Veronica. And I mean, the difficulty I felt and the ingenuity of the gameplay had just like gone up so much that it just completely took me off guard. And I was like, wow, I have to play this game like completely different than I've played any other Resident Evil game before. So it was thrilling, and yeah, I totally had to take it up a notch and really sort of change my whole strategy to the game, and that's why I just loved that project. I just loved the whole way. I even
That's
really
awesome.
kind of liked so they had a couple of like offshoot series, and I really kind of didn't like most of them, but I really did like the not the Outbreak ones, but the ones Operation Raccoon City, the ones with the operatives, the umbrellas. I really liked that, and it was kind of like a mix between the sort of like mechanics of like Code Veronica and the mechanics of Resident Evil 4. But I thought those games were cool. I know they're not very popular, but they're kind of
I enjoyed it when it came out. I remember going to GameStop and picking that up, and the one guy, like when I was getting a pre-order, I had a pre-order and I was getting it, and the employee was like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Of course, I want to play this," And I ended up playing it, and it was like, and I actually really enjoyed it as a what if scenario. I just thought it was a fun co-op shooter.
Operation Raccoon.
Yeah, and it just got a lot of hate from the fans, but it's a fun what if scenario. Some people I feel like most people had to lighten up with that game. It wasn't supposed to be taken completely like we're changing the canon of 2 and 3. It was just like, what if this happened,
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that one too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Yeah, they're still doing that, like I played those remakes. I played Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 recently, the remakes, and they made a lot of changes to it. I mean, some of it good and some of it not so good, but it is definitely, I think, not as scary as it was like when there was something about running off screen into another screen and not knowing what was there. And then all of a sudden there's a zombie there that hadn't made any noise up to that point. You were like, fuck!
Yeah, like the one in Code Veronica that just appears at the door. I'm so glad you said that, Dan, because
that's a great point.
We get so much hate for being, they call us fixed camera angle purists.
Because we think, John, his favorite Resident Evil game of all time is Resident Evil 2. Mine is 3. So when 2 and 3 came out, people were like, well, why isn't it dethroning the original for both of us, like our old favorites? And what you just said is part of that reason.
Literally all the time, Dan, we have to defend ourselves as we don't hate Resident Evil 4, we don't hate 5, we don't hate really any of the games.
No, of course not. Hate's a strong. Hate's a
very strong
We
word.
hate Umbrella Corps.
Yeah, I hate Umbrella Corps.
Umbrella Corps is not a good game.
That game doesn't even say Resident Evil.
No.
And it's the same thing with 7. Like, I don't know if you played Resident Evil 7, but I don't think Resident Evil 7 is that scary.
I didn't play it, no.
Yeah, well, if you ever do, report back to us and let us know what you think of it, because it's first person, and to me, Resident Evil, there was a charm to fixed camera angles that you can't capture with the other camera angles.
Yeah.
4 was great. 4 is a great game. I would say, if objectively speaking, with sales and how well it was received, Resident Evil 4 deserves to be talked about as one of the greatest games of all time.
Yeah.
I think, without a doubt.
Oh, absolutely.
I also think that it was the downfall of Resident Evil.
It started the action.
And the loss of horror.
Because then with 5 you get Wesker in a volcano. Then 6 you get action movie. Chris is jumping out of a helicopter unscathed.
And 5 you get Chris punching
boulders in 5. So it kind of transcended with the movies running on top of it, making a bunch of money, and that also had some influence, which is what we talked about kind of in the Resident Evil movie podcast. But that's an interesting point.
Yeah. We do have one more question,
sure,
and we'll kind of wrap up the Q&A, and we'll go into the actual strategy guides themselves. We've selected a few for those of you listening that we want to talk to Dan about. But the last question we have is actually from a user on our Discord page. They want to know, did you ever, I guess I should say, because you no longer write guides, did you ever find yourself in the middle of a guide and just get a big case of writer's block?
It was difficult to get writer's block. Like I said, our timelines were insane. We sometimes, if we had like 3 weeks a game, that was like a luxury. It was like, oh my gosh, we can actually explore the game. We can actually try different things. But most of the time we we would contract on it, and then we were waiting on the beta, and we were waiting on the
time
beta.
for
And,
block.
we knew, because the to print date didn't change. We had to have the guide to the printer by a certain date so that the printer could actually print the book and get it on the shelves in time. And that date was very inflexible. And so a lot of times we'd be waiting on the developer to send us a ROM, and it wasn't coming. And I was having a heart attack. Because then when we get to the 2-week mark, I would call them on that Monday. I'd be like, guys, where's the game? If I don't get it today or tomorrow, I can't reasonably guarantee that I can complete this project at all. And so there wasn't really time for writer's block, especially when you're doing a guide. Playing the game and, recording it and taking my notes and that kind of thing, that really just kind of drove me. Even when I wasn't really feeling what I was writing, I could just still write down what I was seeing in the videos that I had played and stuff like that. And I had to capture screenshots, and I had to mark all the maps, and I had to review layouts and tell them whether or not the layout, was appropriate for the game title and stuff like that. There was a lot of stuff like that. So writer's block wasn't really like an issue. I think maybe writer's block would kind of come in like in the first chapters, like when I would write about characters or write about the game rules.
Yeah.
But the game rules chapter, which I think, we typically call like basics or something like that, or like how to play the game, where you're basically talking about control schemes and stuff like that. Some of that would flow out, but some of it was just kind of very dry and sort of uninspiring. So I would have to say that like some parts of the writing were a little uninspired, but for the most part, the game and the deadlines kind of propelled you through it. You didn't really have time for writer's block when you're writing a guide. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we have some of these segments pulled up here. From
one
the
more
guides.
thing before we move on. If you're willing to, can you share that story that you had about your friend who wrote the Silent Hill 1 guide?
Okay, so he's not my friend, but there are other guide authors.
He's not his friend.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any direct contact with the guy, and I actually can't even remember his name, but I do know that the original Silent Hill guide for the 1999 game that was published by Prima Games was completely wrong, because the guy who wrote it from, like I was talking about, a pre-release game, and then they didn't get an updated version of the game. So you go through that guide and there's like screenshots of the shotgun being in a completely different place than it was.
Man.
Yeah, like the shotgun was originally like laying in the middle of the street somewhere, and they moved it, I think, into a building or something like that.
In like a different version.
Yeah. So like they had moved like the weapons and many of the important items around in the game. So the whole guide was like just completely useless. And I don't think anybody really I don't think there was a top selling guide, because I think, Silent Hill was straightforward enough. I don't think anybody felt like they needed a guide until it got like really dark toward the end of the game. But that's just another instance of where like an entire guide could be published and it would have wrong information just because we didn't get an update from, an updated ROM from the developer.
That's incredible.
That is just crazy. And I wanted you to share that story because even though it wasn't your friend, my bad, I misremembered.
No, it's okay.
I wanted you to tell that story because that could be true of any author.
Yeah.
That's one instance, but how many times has that happened?
Oh my God! There was like little mistakes in almost every guide, and we talked about it all the time. It was just like, like sometimes it would get a little scary. Like I got an updated version. So like I originally started Vagrant Story playing with the Japanese version, and then I didn't get the English version until I was almost done with the project. So then I had to, and that happened a lot. We would get like a beta version or a gold version of the game, like just as I was finishing, like just after I had already written everything and taken all the screenshots and everything. And it was like, oh, crud. Now you got a new version of the game. And so I would go back into like, emergency mode, I would play like the new version of the game. And yeah, like especially with the English version, like stuff had moved. There were all different kinds of stuff that moved in Vagrant Story, and some of the enemies weren't where I had encountered them previously in the Japanese version. There was stuff like that all the time, like Splinter Cell I was talking about earlier. Splinter Cell had a bunch of changes to it in the final version. I don't think that was... Oh, you know what happened with Resident Evil 4 is like almost all the merchant stuff had changed. Like all the prices or something like that had just completely changed. So that wasn't like a terrible edit. That was like not too bad, but that's still one of those things where like you're playing and you're like, all these prices are different. Holy crap. And so then you play the whole game again and you're looking for any difference. You're like become kind of paranoid because you certainly don't want the guide to be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. So let's open up the Resident Evil 0 guide we have here. Hopefully you have the same one as we do. It's the Signature Series. Yep. And go to page 2. So this is one of the first questions that we had. And like we said earlier, you might not remember the information or how this happened. But you being able to read Japanese kind of gives me a hint at what this might... like... Some of these questions we're going to ask you, I have a feeling that it's going to come up to just like you being told or reading something from a Japanese strategy guide or a Japanese guide or a Daizenshu or whatever. But at the... where is it here? At the bottom of that page, you have a timeline here. It's called The History of Resident Evil.
Oh, okay.
You see where it says summer 1967?
Yeah, so I think that we put a lot of this together in order to tie it to the original Resident Evil. Yeah, so this is the history of Resident Evil section. So quite a bit of this was just sort of written off the cuff. After we had done this for Code Veronica, they wanted me to add this kind of stuff to the books. And
okay.
We wanted to like pad this book because we had to get the book up to 128 pages minimum. And the reason we had to do that was because of the printing costs. There was a price break at 128 pages. So the imprint, Brady Games, could literally print the guide cheaper if we got it up to 128 pages. So they were, I think we were padding books a little bit in advance when we could. But then sometimes that we would go back and take that stuff out, just so we could keep the game a little cheaper, especially if the pre-orders hadn't gone as well as the game developer had expected or had told us they would go. So this timeline, I'm thinking this timeline, I think the timeline stuff came from somewhere, though. I'm not sure that I came up with
that was what I was going to ask you. What I find interesting and what we wanted to talk about that particular summer 1967 line was because I don't know if you know this, but what you have listed here, the first Special Tactics and Rescue Squad is STARS, is formed as a special branch of the NYPD in New York. That is directly from S.D. Perry's novel, the novelization of the game.
Oh, wow.
And I was curious as to if you remember where you guys got this timeline from, or if you were the one who even wrote the timeline.
I do not remember.
Okay.
I do not remember where the timeline came from. I'm reading it, just the thing across the bottom with the 1950s.
Yeah. Were you the one who wrote it?
I would have typed the words, definitely, but I don't know if I typed all that. I don't believe that I would have typed all that from scratch. I think I pulled quite a bit of this from the files of Resident Evil 1. And I don't know where the NYPD reference came from.
Yeah, that was definitely from the novels. I was just interesting. Did you read the novels?
No.
Okay, so what I'm guessing is that somebody either told you or this timeline was in like a Japanese guide that you might have looked at?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I think the timeline might have come from a Japanese source and it might have been translated. Okay. No, there's not really anything I could go look at that would tell me this information.
Oh, that's not a problem. It was just one example on this page that we were curious to see, like if you remembered where you might have gotten it from.
Yeah. I'm like reading the Wesker's report thing. I'm like fascinated by this.
Yeah, the Wesker's report was actually a DVD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
so that might
Wesker's
have,
report was a DVD.
So that might have been transcribed from something else too.
Yeah, I don't know if this was the one. Is this the actual transcribe from the DVD?
I don't think it's from.
No, I don't think this is the
in
DVD.
particular. Because the DVD
Yeah, I
is a
think this
whole
is its
thing.
own thing.
Yeah,
And this looks like something you directly might have translated with your translators.
Yeah.
From a Japanese guide.
Yeah, maybe from a Japanese guide, probably. But I think I may have extrapolated a bit. I'm fascinated. I cannot remember writing that.
Extrapolated, like as in made up?
Yeah, I think parts of it I may have, added some character to. Let's say it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
like even so Wesker is here talking about, I was an egoistic young man in those days, and I didn't want to recognize his indifference to us. I don't really see Wesker calling himself egoistic.
Hey, you know what? You had fun with it. I appreciate it.
I think I was
your own spin on it.
I think I was high on Red Bulls and and
Skittles,
and I was like on a real tear here. So I think I may have taken some liberties here. And if that upsets some people, I'm sorry. But really, the whole thing, really, even the guide, is really meant to be entertainment. This newspaper clipping, the one on page, I think I'm looking at 14, where it just says stars. Yeah, I wrote that. I remember writing that. Now, okay, yeah, and I wrote this top secret police document. Yes, I put all this kind of stuff in here. I wrote these profiles of each of the characters. Yeah. But boy, that Wesker, I can't believe what, so here's the thing, like I'm looking at something like Wesker's report here, and I'm like, holy cow, they didn't usually give me this level of freedom with the material.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. Like, how often, did you get the green light to just extrapolate?
Or
did you just do it?
Yeah, a lot of times we would just do it. Like in the Silent Hill 3 official strategy guide, there's like a whole bunch of stuff at the back of the book.
We have to talk about that.
That's what we're going to talk about
Okay,
next.
yeah, cool. Like,
oh, no.
Like, so I had done a rather controversial plot synopsis of Silent Hill 1, and then I did another one for Silent Hill 2 almost as soon as I finished the official guide, because they didn't want I tried to suggest that we add that to the Silent Hill 2 strategy guide, but they weren't interested, so I already had it written out. So I just released that on GameFAQs as my own publication. So yeah, I enjoyed having fun with like Silent Hill games and saying, it was, when they have like Bachman Road in Silent Hill, they're referring to Richard Bachman, which is, Stephen King's pseudonym. And there's there's elements of Stephen King you can recognize from the story The Mist, and even some of the monsters appear to be inspired by monsters that are described in the Stephen King novella The Mist. So I liked making those kind of connections for people if they hadn't made them on their own already. Like if they weren't a cinephile like me, like somebody who sat around watching a lot of horror movies, and maybe
that's Anthony.
Yeah, and maybe maybe what was going on in Silent Hill was just too much of a mystery, because that's the way it seemed. I mean, like when the first Silent Hill game came out, that would seem to be people's initial reaction. Is not like, I like the gameplay. They weren't saying like, I like the gameplay. They weren't saying I like the story. They were like, I'm confused as shit. What was that about?
Yeah.
I think that's a really good
like,
point,
what the hell
though.
was that?
Yeah.
Like, that's a really good point you make. It wasn't that people were really liked the game or really liked the mystery. It was more, back then I could totally see where you're coming from, where people were just confused as fuck.
Yeah. That's
like they didn't know what was going on. So they would turn to something like the strategy guide, because, a lot of people, and unfortunately this is just how people are, a lot of people don't realize that like yourself and other authors aren't associated with the company who's writing the game or who's making the game. So they just think like, oh, Dan Birlew, I don't know who that is, but Konami, he works for them, and everything he puts in this strategy guide is gospel.
Well, that's a leap.
And no, it's not a leap.
Well,
though.
okay,
Like,
but
people
yeah,
really think that.
You're right. It's not that big a leap because we have to submit all this stuff to the game developers for approval, like I said, and they could nix anything they want to. They could nix this entire chapter if they want. But, I think I'm looking at Silent Hill 3 here, and I can't believe that we got some of this stuff into the guide that we got. I mean, here I call this boss the God, and that probably was not even the name of the boss, but it's probably not the technical name of the boss. The boss probably had a much different name. I mean, they have weird. When we got the Japanese documents for Silent Hill 2, they had weird names. Like one of the monsters was called Sea Pickle.
I 100% believe that.
And then
That's
Like,
actually
I just
kind of cool.
believe
That's
that.
a cool bit of information.
Yeah.
like the one that didn't have any arms and just kind of wiggled around all over the place.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
just walked
Oh
out.
yeah, the enemy without the arms that wiggled. I remember which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
They called that sea pickle.
Yeah, and the Japanese documents called it a sea pickle.
Wow.
So I mean, then I would go to and then there was another one that was a little more controversial. There was Parasite Eve 2. And in the documentation we got, one of the monsters in there was called Fatso or Fatty or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not cool. I didn't want that in the book. I didn't want to write a book where I was calling even a monster. I didn't want to call a monster Fatso. I thought that was degrading.
Well, that's a very interesting point too, because Parasite Eve 2 is one of Dustin's favorite games of all
awesome.
time. And so the fact that you just did a shout out for PE2 and talked about how there was a controversial naming thing is a bit of information he probably doesn't know, and he's probably grinning ear to ear in the other room right now.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Shout out to Dustin.
Yeah, shout out to Dustin. He's in the chat. And by chat, I mean the room next to us. So yeah, I have it pulled up on the screen here, Dan. I think you can kind of see it because I was sharing my screen.
I wish I could make this bigger because I am pretty old.
You should be. You're not that old. You should be. You're like, honestly.
Oh,
Dan
hey,
Birlew,
I popped it out.
You're like the same age as Chris and Leon in the current timeline right now. and they're suplexing people.
Okay.
So Dan, you can suplex anyone you want.
So there's hope for me. All right, good. As long as
there's hope for you. Yeah.
as long as Chris. Hey, so I'm sorry, I'm asking you guys this. I really am not following too closely. So Resident Evil 8 is going to be like Resident Evil 7? Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Resident Evil. Don't call it 8, Dan. It's Village.
Oh, that's right.
They're
It's-
hiding
It's
the
Village.
8, but they're still showing it.
They don't want it to be called 8, even though they show you that the 8 is in the title.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, it's going to be like Resident Evil 7.
All right.
And we're going to be covering it every step of the way.
Cool.
So if you keep up to date with us, we will keep you informed. And you should totally play it because it's looking really good, I'd have to say.
Yeah, it actually does look.
The trailer was bad.
Last
The
trailer
last trailer
wasn't
was
good.
bad. They kind of felt like lazily cut together.
And yeah, I saw like old Chris Redfield going around shooting people in the head. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Yeah, that was-
that's
yeah,
pretty
that's
cold,
pretty-
man. He's
Her name was Mia.
Chris Redfield is done, man. He's just like screw it.
He's over it.
You people,
Yeah, he's had
people
enough.
get in my
You
way.
know what we need? You know what we really need? Whether it's official or not, we need a full Resident Evil Village strategy guide from Dan Birlew.
Holy cow!
We need that to happen. You need to do a web series or something.
We'll do a digital guide.
A digital guide. We'll even help you.
Hey, you know what?
We can post it right here on Let's Talk Resident Evil.
You know what?
Big letters.
I've been thinking about this. So people, like with crowdsourcing nowadays, I'm wondering if like it's possible to crowdsource like some kind of database or resource, and
You
know.
100% can.
I think that with
Other people have done it with
Other
the
people-
Final Fantasy VII thing.
yeah, there's got to be a way.
Like the gaming engineering, where they reverse engineer and reverse talk about how Final Fantasy VII was made
oh wow.
from scratch.
So they like take apart the code and they can figure out how it was developed. Is that what happened?
Well, no, they take apart like the synopsis list, so they break the game down basically all the way to dungeon design and monster design, enemy design, why things are named the way they are. Like they do a whole dissection.
They strip
of
it down basically.
and it was a guide that
Wow.
was kickstarted.
Oh wow, that
I'm
sounds
pretty
awesome.
sure, or it was either Final Fantasy VII or World of Warcraft. I forget which one it was, but they did that, and apparently it was completely fine to do.
Cool.
Well,
Because strategy
you know,
guides are technically fair use, aren't they?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, no, I don't
As-
think so. Because like
As
Brady
long as there's
Brady
no,
games
as
would,
long as there's no pictures.
yeah, Brady games would chase people to the end of the internet because people would just like, I don't know how they manage, but they would just they would retype entire sections of our guidebooks
yeah.
into their websites, and Brady
Yeah.
games
Wow.
would go around and smite them and be like, send them cease and desist letters and be like, listen, you got to take our content.
we would have to
off
do
your
like
website.
a fan tech. It's like a text only thing or something, and make
Not
no money
even.
off
We
of
could
it.
just do a video
Yeah, I mean,
because video guides are fine.
yeah, as long as you add commentary, I think it's fair use. Yeah,
fair
Yeah.
use, right?
yeah.
We need the commentary, Dan Birlew,
The
Resident
collaboration.
Evil Village strategy guide.
All right. I'll see if there's interest, and maybe put the Kickstarter up there and
It'd be perfect.
yeah, work on it.
The fans' voices will be heard.
They'll
They'll kill to have a guide written by the fans for the fans, because
Yeah.
now there's no guide, but like
Oh heck yeah!
you know, there's no guidebooks, you know what I mean, and there's a lot of video guides, but like, you know, a lot of people you know, some people do it right, some people don't do it right. I think like that would be really cool if we can bring back the old school vibe of the guides. That'd be really cool.
Yeah,
That would
in
be, yeah.
the format of
In a
fair
format
use.
of fair use and in
With
a,
the
in a
video.
way that like it's easy
Yeah.
to understand, but it's not like all the other video guides that you see, because a lot of them kind of seem samey after each game comes out, and you see a lot of them that are the same.
It's such a weird place in time right now with 2020, because like if we like, let's just say it happened and we partnered up with you, Dan, and we did a Kickstarter for a video project, and we put this video out there for people to watch on YouTube, where it was a strategy guide, essentially where you could click through the description and get to anything you wanted
we
to.
can have like well, I know they don't have annotations, but we
Yeah.
can have like in video links to
links
like,
and stuff to other sections of the guidebook. It basically would be a digital guide.
Yeah.
Like everybody would be completely okay with that, whatever. But if you put it in book format, all of a sudden you're getting sued.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just so weird.
yeah.
It
It's
is.
just like a weird time.
Well, now the industry's, I guess, shifted, because now everything's like, now that there is no guidebooks,
Then again,
now it's just YouTube is just like, that's
we
where
do
people
have
go.
contact inside of Capcom. We could push it.
We could.
We could. I would love to see Dan Birlew, you know, dust himself off and go get that ink pen and be like, "You's about to get extrapolated today."
Well, you know what we would have to do is even RE7 that does not have an American guide.
It doesn't have an American guide, but they do it in Japan. I don't understand.
They still do it in Japan.
And Japan's more digital than physical
We
than
could do
we
the
are.
7 and 8 guide. That's the
the 7
pitch
and 8
right
guide,
there.
the Ethan guide. Dan,
Ethan
you
guide.
could give Ethan a backstory because he has none.
Yeah,
Holy
you can
crap.
actually give him more backstory than Capcom actually did.
Actually, a Smash character.
He
Yeah,
is.
Ethan.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, he's like the main character in 7, but he doesn't actually have a face or any like
he
personality.
has a face. You see it for 13 seconds of the whole 8-hour game.
Oh, my
Yeah,
word.
but you know, it's not really like a character like you would think
Yeah.
that you're familiar with, Dan, from the Resident Evil games. But anyway, I
Yeah.
digress.
Yeah, we digress. I digress too.
we were just having a brainstorm
we are
moment.
a brainstorm moment.
No, that's cool.
We would
That's
love
cool.
to just see you make a return. I call it a return to ink.
Oh,
Return to
I
ink.
would.
A return to ink.
Yeah, that'd
a
be
return
awesome.
to the midnight Red Bull and Skittles.
The Red Bull and Skittles.
Oh,
Dan Birlew
man.
It's like
pack.
I've been working on this guide for 3 damn days.
That was hard for me in my 30s. In my 50s, I don't think that's I think I'll have a heart attack. Oh, man. I can't even imagine.
Anyway, reeling it back into the Silent Hill 3 strategy guide. So as you can see here, there is a debate within the Silent Hill community about whether or not Dahlia, Alessa's mother, burned her intentionally in the fire or if it was an accident. In your synopsis that you guys included in the book, it says that it was intentional. Do you remember if you got, like, information provided by Konami or Team Silent that was intentional, or was this a moment of you kind of trying to give an understanding to the fans who are reading the book?
So I think it was just trying to pass along an understanding from the first game. So in the first game, there was a very vague explanation of what happened to Alessa. And I think it's intentionally vague. But I do think that so there was a scene where they had already burned her. And it was in Dahlia's own house. So then who set Dahlia's house on fire?
Yeah.
Because that was in the opening. The burning house was in the opening, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, and so there's some leaps because it's not directly said that this is Dahlia's house that you're seeing in the opening. There was even like a famous screenshot that was passed around quite a bit. And then that house itself appeared in another Silent Hill game. Origins? The one with the trucker?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, not the trucker Silent Hill.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that one, Dan.
Oh, but that one...
We stick to 1 through 4 here.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
4 was the one with the room, right?
It was the one with the room. How do you feel about that one?
Oh, that was a weird game. But
It was a weird
I think I
game.
remember not really enjoying it until toward the end. I don't know if...
I could see that.
I didn't really even see the link to the other games until the very end. And it had such a different style. It wasn't dark, It didn't go into the world of darkness like the other games did. So I thought it was just... I thought they were taking it like too far from the original source material. And then there was
got
like
even further away.
and then you
after
like
that,
have all
too.
these scenes with these incidental characters who die horribly like 2 minutes later, and I'm like, why did I just listen to that person's whole life story or get their whole life view if now they're just going to die? I don't really understand. Anyway,
So-
yeah, that game wasn't
yeah.
like my favorite, definitely not. So
I gotcha.
I think I don't know what it is that made me think that the fire was intentional, but so if the fire wasn't intentional, then what happened? Like, what was the other explanation? There just wasn't one.
There
Right,
wasn't one.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly why
So
we
you-
want you to have this ground to defend yourself, because
Yeah. So
the
here,
Silent Hill fandom is a lot worse than the Resident Evil fandom.
Yeah.
In terms of like hatred.
so if you think about it, if you think about what Dahlia explains while they're
Yeah.
while they're standing over Alessa's burned body at the end of the first Silent Hill, and if you understand like the kind of like relationship between Kaufman and Dahlia, Kaufman was basically, I think he wanted not only to go his own way, I think he wanted to take charge. But Dahlia, of course, like being a witch, she wouldn't give him charge. So whether or not Dahlia's burned her own house down or whether Kaufman burned her house down to try to kill her, the fire was set intentionally.
You know what? And it's hard to argue with your logic in that statement. That does seem like the logical thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
would've been
I would still allow someone to argue, and I would not tell them they're wrong. I just think it was left so vague for
There's never another answer.
for 3 games. It was like so vague that we really weren't getting this answer. So, I mean, the fire that burned Alessa was intentionally set. It had to be. It was not an accident. That just doesn't accidentally break out. The other option is maybe Alessa did it herself. More like
That's
Alessa.
another very interesting
Yeah.
take. I don't think I've ever heard that take.
Yeah, but no matter who set the fire, it was set intentionally. Whether Alessa set it with her powers. Okay, so if Alessa set it with her powers, that would be an accident, right? That could be an accident. But
Yeah.
if Kaufman set Dahlia's house on fire to try to take her out and to take her power away, because Dahlia giving birth, of course, to their god shifted power in the cult. Right? So
Yeah.
then all of a sudden Dahlia was like in charge and the end all be all, and here's this sick old woman basically telling everybody else to throw themselves on their swords for her benefit, the benefit of her and her god progeny or whatever was going on.
Yeah.
And Alessa was not necessarily a willing subject either. She was more of a normal little girl who was sort of tortured by these people into believing that she was supposed to be some kind of god. So yeah, I think that was just my stance, is that one way or another, somebody set Dahlia's house on fire. It was either Dahlia or it was Kaufman, so it was most likely intentional.
Gotcha.
I think that-
and then that leads into the next thing. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
I think that if Alessa had accidentally set the fire by herself, she could have gotten out of it. So obviously, I think it was done to her or something.
That's true.
So that was my line of thinking in saying that, I think.
And we're not here to say you're right or wrong. We're just
Yeah.
here to, get your statement.
Sure.
It sounds like we're
Yeah, this is
coming
a
down with a gavel.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, you're innocent.
Yeah, that's fine.
Leading into the next thing with Alessa, the Silent Hill live action movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah. I liked it.
You have seen it?
Yeah,
okay.
I liked it. It was fun.
So it portrays Alessa as a vengeful, evil little girl who was inflicting her pain on the town with her abilities as an act of revenge. And the video games that followed the movie also incorporated a lot of those ideas and themes into their portrayal of and accounts of Alessa, like some of like the Shattered Memories and stuff like that. I believe is some of the games that incorporated that vengeful little girl thing. On page 154 of this strategy guide here, it says that Alessa was sharing her pain with the town of Silent Hill in a horrific fit of vengeance. Were
in the
you
book? Okay, let me go to 154 and get that context.
Yeah, in 154. Harry came to two conclusions. It was either that he was dreaming all of it, or Silent Hill's being taken over by someone's nightmarish delusions come to life. And then it kind of goes on to say like Alessa was sharing her pain with the town of Silent Hill. So it's like Alessa was being like vengeful and an evil little girl. So one of the reasons why we wanted to ask you about this,
so do you think I misled the producers of Silent Hill, the movie? that would be fucking hilarious. No, I don't think that they.
Dan's sitting here like the whole
I don't
movie
think that you were intentionally doing it.
No.
We found it interesting that they actually cited as this guide as being one of the things that they looked at.
Yeah, so it was very confusing because in Silent Hill 1, it was really, if you take Silent Hill 1 by itself and just all the content that you experience there and all the things that you have there, everything that is explained and everything that isn't explained, it really does, the changes from ashy, snowy, misty Silent Hill to dark Silent Hill really have to do with Harry getting to... Every time Harry gets closer, every time he gets really close to some bit of information about Alessa's past, everything changes. And so the whole game of the first game of Silent Hill is really triggered on Alessa and Cheryl, and I'm talking about Alessa and Cheryl because when Cheryl comes back to this town, she remembers that she's Alessa. That's why she runs away from Harry. That's what makes sense to me, is that she runs away from Harry because she realizes she's not his daughter. And that there's something in this town that obviously amplifies her power. Well, there's the rest of her is in this town, and the rest of her, basically was burned half to death and spent all these years in torment, and in a coma, I'm suspecting, and wasn't really awakened until Harry came back with Cheryl. So my theory at that point, I think, was that everything in Silent Hill was triggered on Harry. But when you play Silent Hill 3, I remember them talking a lot. They were trying to take it sort of away from Alessa because, frankly, that's who Heather is, right? Heather is basically another version of Alessa that was given to Harry to raise, depending on the outcome you got from Silent Hill 1. So they kind of changed. They kind of pivoted between Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3. And these two games, of course, are directly connected in story. And Silent Hill 2 is almost like its own story. So that's why there's such a big gap. And as you're going through Silent Hill 3, I remember my reaction being, okay, they're trying to take it, like in the first game, you really had nothing to... You really had nothing to interpret except that it was obviously all of these events were triggered by Alessa. And Alessa's reawakening and her realization that she was from this town, she had a past here that was horrible, and that part of her was still here and was still being held hostage by the cult. So then Cheryl changes forms and becomes the older Alessa. And that's who Harry sees every now and again. And it's who he's literally pursuing. He's pursuing Cheryl, but she doesn't even look the same anymore. She's literally becoming Alessa. And also just the fact that, he defeats that one boss in the school and she's right there, standing there, and just vanishes. I mean, obviously she's throwing these roadblocks in her path. So I felt almost like that first boss in that school was triggered by Alessa. Like she wanted to put that in Harry's path. And when he defeated it, she kind of smiles at him in a creepy way and then vanishes. So like it's almost like the story shifted a bit though, and then like the kind of mechanics of Silent Hill going from this, switching from switching from regular to dark Silent Hill, they kind of were throwing that all out the window as far as that being Alessa's doing, because Heather is not pursuing Alessa. It's a different theme in Silent Hill 3. Are you following me at all? Like,
Yep.
Like Heather is just kind of experiencing Silent Hill, whereas Alessa was kind of making it happen. Alessa and her power had an active hand in what Harry experienced, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then with 3, it's like you're experiencing it from like Heather's perspective, but it's a different perspective of Silent Hill.
yeah, because Heather's not doing any of it,
Right.
which becomes
Doesn't have a
confusing.
hand
Yeah,
in it.
I
She's
mean,
more like the confused, like kind of stubborn, teenage girl who's just trying to like, look, I'm trying to do this on my own at some point.
yeah, exactly. So they changed the story a lot with Silent Hill 3. And Silent Hill 3, of course, gave us more answers. I think it gave us more concrete answers because it really went into like the cult of Silent Hill and what they believed. And it kind of, I almost felt like there were some retcons in Silent Hill 3.
There could be.
I felt like
they'll never tell us.
Yeah, I felt like they had sort of changed the nature of the god that was, embodied in Alessa. And it was more of like and I think they made it more convenient, so it was something that they could bring back over and over again, so they could make a bunch of sequels and a bunch of money. But yeah, so I don't know. It's difficult for me to remember back, like why I went with the wording I went with on like a specific page or in talking something about that. But I definitely felt like in the first game it was Alessa sort of having these sort of like seizures, if you want to call them, that was causing the town to shift between regular to dark whenever Harry got too close to catching up with her, because Harry was carrying the Floros, which was given to him by Dahlia. Dahlia basically used Harry to get the Floros close to Alessa so that she could take over control again. Alessa was blocking Harry by I think, causing the darkness and allowing all the creatures to come into it. That's funny that somebody thinks that what I wrote there may have influenced the movie. That's kind of hilarious.
It's not just somebody. Like, there is a big community that thinks that.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying I'm just saying
good that
I don't believe it or disbelieve it. Disbelieve it.
It's good that you were able to kind of give like your interpretation, because there's so many different ones for Silent Hill. Also, like, to again, like, so many years go by, you don't remember everything specifically that you wrote on each page.
Yeah.
So it's good that like you're able to kind of explain from what you remember and your experiences from that, because that's what people want to hear.
Yeah, but honestly, there's like holes in what I'm remembering, and you can hear that in what I'm saying. But
there's also like the other problem too is that as the years go by and things are different and things are changed and remastered, retcons happen with no acknowledgement from the company that's making the game.
Right.
They're just like, nobody cares about that.
Like I'm not even sure I can pull up recall a specific instance, but I remember that trucker game, Silent Hill Origins. I felt like that was just retcon after retcon in that, because why would all of that happen to him if the inciting incident in Silent Hill 1 is when Cheryl returns?
Yeah, I never even played that one. I just heard that like it was like, it did a lot of weird stuff that they were trying to do, because then also like a different team took over, and then it was just like a whole, like, just different things just start changing.
A lot of people say that was where like the spirit changed.
After the fourth one, for sure.
Yeah, and the last thing we have for you for this Silent Hill 3 guide was just a question that we wanted to ask you about a character named Sybil Bennett. You remember the cop from the first game?
Oh yeah.
So she's not in the character relation chart, which is on page 159 at all, even though some of the other characters from the first game are.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she's not even mentioned in the synopsis of what happened in Silent Hill. And so there's this big debate whether or not she lived or died, because as you know, in the game, she could live or die depending on what you did. And there's no idea of like what became of her, because she's not in Silent Hill 3. I'm curious.
I don't think she was mentioned much in Silent Hill 3. It was almost like
she wasn't.
It was almost like
at all.
Yeah, it was almost like they wanted. It was almost like they just kind of were sort of ignoring her entire appearance in Silent Hill 1, or that she had any.
She didn't play any role.
Yeah, like she didn't play
yeah.
any real role, like in as far as like Silent Hill 3 was concerned, and so with the focus being Silent Hill 3, maybe that's why I didn't include her. It kind of is an oversight. It's kind of what it seems like to me now, looking at this now after all these years. It's like, oh yeah, Sybil should have been in the character relationship chart somewhere. But then, I then again, like I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm like, how does Sybil fit into Silent Hill 3? And I'm not exactly sure. And there's all these other new characters that do fit into Silent Hill 3. So I'm not sure. Maybe that's why she was sort of omitted from the Silent Hill 3 book, is because she just wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, you do a synopsis of the first game.
Yeah.
And so it feels like, it doesn't feel like you're the kind of guy who would oversight something like that. So
yeah, no.
because you're even though you said that you like wouldn't remember a lot, like you're on top of your shit.
Yeah.
Like you've remembered and given answers way more detailed than we expected.
Okay, cool.
So like
not to take anything away.
Well, no, he said, like, you set the expectation when we talked to you on the phone, and you were like, hey, I don't remember a lot, and that was clearly not true, because you remember a lot.
It comes back. It comes back, but it only comes back in pieces, right? I mean, this was like, this is 2003. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just interested, like, what do you remember specifically? Like, was Konami one of those companies that you would send it in and then they would tell you to take stuff out?
Okay, so like I do remember, here's the thing. We got a chance to ask questions about Silent Hill 2, and I think even like late into the Silent Hill 2 project, my question to Konami was, how is this related to Silent Hill 1? And their answer that they came back was kind of like this terse thing that, like, Silent Hill 3 is our previous title, Silent Hill is our previous title, and Silent Hill 2 is the current focus. And I was like, okay, that's kind of a weird sort of corporate dodgy answer to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were. I was trying to extrapolate those things. I was trying to say, so in that game, I think the character's name was James, right? And I was trying to think like, so how is Mary related to Dahlia somehow? Is she part of the same coven? Like, because Mary seems to have this power. She sort of seems to gain this power from being in Silent Hill. And was Mary murdered in Silent Hill? And I think I'm not remembering exactly, but I think at the end of the game we figured out that James did murder his wife in Silent Hill, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
And then the letter and everything on the credits roll.
Yeah, and then
kind of explains that.
Yeah, and then so like, and my question was, did Mary somehow inherit Alessa's power and her ability to change Silent Hill as it was in order to punish James? And, then because I had tried to connect it to Silent Hill 1, again, we got this answer like, Silent Hill is our previous property. Our current focus is Silent Hill 2.
And you're sitting there trying to decipher this like cryptic like message. You're like, what do they mean by that?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think it was just
and then
sort
they
of
just look at you and they're like, "What do you mean? What do I mean?"
yeah,
it's our current project,
it's our
and
current
the
project.
Silent Hill is the previous
And
project.
you're like, all right, I guess I just got to go with it now and just think of.
Let me
like, what I
reword
played.
this, Konami-san.
Yeah, exactly.
Is Silent Hill 1 and 2
Is this a trilogy?
related?
Yeah.
Does the third
Does
game go
Silent
back
Hill
to the
2
first
have
one?
anything to do with Silent Hill 1, and they take a moment, they pause, and then they go, "Well, you see, Dan-san, Silent Hill 2 is our current project, and Silent Hill 1 is the past."
And you're just like, what is this? Like, you feel like you're losing your mind. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, no, and that was just, that was like, so that I mean, those were the questions that I had from that point. I didn't have any questions about like strategy. Silent Hill 2 seemed like an easy game to beat, and there really wasn't. And even though I went back and replayed it like several times, there didn't seem to be any path variances to find like in Resident Evil 3 or something like that. So I mean, with it just being such a basic game, I mean, I was just trying to piece together like the plot so I could kind of guide people through the plot. But then the plot guide that I wrote wound up not making it into the Silent Hill 2 strategy guide. It was just and I don't think it was Konami said it couldn't make it in the strategy guide. I think it was just Brady Games was like, we don't typically do that, so we're not going to put that in the book, Dan. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. But then on Silent Hill 3, I wrote out this whole summary, and I sent it to him. I said, you guys nixed this last time. I'm just sending this to you again because, a lot of this game relates directly to Silent Hill 1, and I think this would be helpful for people who are just picking up Silent Hill 3 and can't get their hands on a copy of the first game. I think it would just help them to understand what went on in the first game so that they can appreciate Silent Hill 3 a little better. Oh, and I think I remember the editor saying, well, you know what, we can just like send it over, and if they approve it, then great, and if they don't approve it, then we have to throw it out. So that apparently like somebody at Konami read it and approved it. Now I'm not going to say I don't think that like our guides were put in front of people like, Akira, what was his name? Akira Yamaoka? Yeah. So I don't think like Akira Yamaoka read our book, and I don't think like Hideo Kojima like read our strategy guide. I don't think those people actually sat down and went page by page and gave us corrections. I don't know. I think it was
Hideo Kojima might have.
Yeah.
He might have been like, this doesn't meet my standard.
He was.
In 15 years' time, I make Death Stranding. Nobody understands
Death Stranding.
And that's what he's going to be. He's going to be like, if Dan's son wrote the strategy guide for Death Stranding, everyone would understand.
Everyone.
I did have a couple people reach out to me in recent years and say, I really could use a plot guide for Death Stranding. I really wish you'd play that game and let me know what the heck is going on there. And I'll be honest with you, I bought Death Stranding on PC, and I probably got about 2 hours into it. And then I think the guy with the gold face showed up. And I was like, I'm out. I'm done. I don't understand. I do not understand what the hell is going on.
It would have been really cool to see PT come to fruition. Were you a fan of that when you saw that?
So I missed PT. I actually took a break from gaming after I left the strategy guide business. I didn't play video games for several years. Actually, I kind of just like needed like a mental unwind, and I needed to focus on my personal life, which was kind of falling apart.
Was that 2008? Was that when the wave rolled back as far as the industry?
Yeah. 2008 really kind of the game industry kind of, I don't want to say took advantage of 2008, but they did definitely take the opportunity to just basically cancel any title that wasn't a AAA title. And then suddenly we didn't have enough books to write. And that was really, like how we made our money. I mean, by the game industry putting out a certain number of games every year, we had books to write. And when they
projects to start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When they cut back on anything, I mean, they cut like so many games. They just canceled all these games. Any game that wasn't like already a AAA brand that wasn't going to sell like 1 million copies on day one, they just like killed it. And so suddenly, like entire guides just got shelved, went out the window. Like, the authors were paid off or paid like half the amount, and it's just like, your guide's not going to be published. But oh
man,
yeah, like 2008 hit like a bombshell in the strategy guide industry. Like people bailed out. Like there were guide authors who just had nothing to do anymore. I went from writing like 8 or 9 books a year to writing like 3 or 4, and my salary obviously like was cut in half, and suddenly I couldn't make ends meet. I couldn't like pay for my house and stuff like that. And so I took a major hit from that personally, and so did my marriage. I got divorced and everything, and
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear
that.
that.
It was a rough time.
08 was a bad.
It was.
Yeah, it was a bad year.
It was a bad couple of years. I was having fun being a grown up kid playing all these video games, writing all these guides, and suddenly it was time. Suddenly I got hit with a whole lot of adult stuff, and that sucked. And I don't want to go through that again. But here's 2020. I guess we all get to go through it again together.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Here's a question for you. I think this is the last question I have for you, Dan. But have you ever considered, or would you ever consider, taking up game reviews for like one of the online companies, like Game Informer?
Definitely.
Because I think that you show a deeper appreciation for the ins and outs. Just like, obviously this isn't an all-inclusive topic because like we didn't talk too much about like your favorite games and stuff like that, but just from the tone that you set with like when you're talking about how you wrote the guides, the knife strategies, the things that like really excited you about playing some of these games, I think you would be a really good video game reviewer.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Maybe I should write up some like sample reviews and send them out somewhere.
There you go.
Kind of seems like places are closing up there. It's kind of a scary time in like all industries right now. But I think like didn't Game Informer just close? Or am I wrong about that? Or
I'm still getting them in the mail. So
okay.
as of now,
they might have closed their office for COVID purposes, but they still do their weekly or their monthly podcast.
I think now that they do a lot of the. I know they still do. Like, because I sign up for, if you do like the GameStop rewards thing, you can ask for digital or like printed magazine. I still like getting the printed one, so they still send them, but I don't know for how long.
Even on your YouTube channel, Dan, you could do game reviews.
Yeah, I totally should. Yeah, and people have stated that to me too, but I don't know. I guess I'm too obsessed with Minecraft.
You could do a Minecraft all-inclusive review.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been doing a series on YouTube, so I mean, in a way, it's like each one of those is sort of a review. Because like I try stuff and it doesn't work.
Did you find? Did you go back and like play anything, or did you kind of like with the quarantine and everything? Did you kind of like find a love in some of the gaming stuff you might have missed in the past few years? Did you go back and play anything or play any new titles?
You know what? I had missed out on Batman on the last Batman game, the Arkham Knight, and then Epic had it for free, so I downloaded. I'm actually playing that game right now.
There you go.
Yeah, so I played Arkham Asylum and I played Arkham City, and I loved Arkham City. I just went on and on about how much I love that game. And I'm playing Arkham Knight now. The PC port is kind of, has its moments, but it's a pretty good game. So yeah, I mean, I've gone back a little bit. I definitely recently they had a big sale on all the Resident Evil PC games. So now
they're doing it now. Actually,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, now I have all the Resident Evil games on PC pretty much. I guess except for the original 2D ones.
Unfortunately, they never put them on Steam, man. They're impossible to run unless you have the old computer to run it. You can't even run the original 1, 2, and 3 at all. Like it sucks that people. The only way people can really play them is emulation.
Yeah.
At this point,
I got 2 to run, the platinum version to run.
Oh, cool.
And then I turned my computer on the next day and it didn't run.
It's so
weird.
It just doesn't work on Windows 10.
Yeah, it just doesn't work on Windows 10.
You got to have something to make it work. So
you have to go back and build an old 52 megabyte hard drive computer to play those.
Oh, why would you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we I guess one of the last questions that I have for you is you mentioned horror a little bit earlier. Do you have a particular fascination with horror games or horror movies? Did you see something or play something growing up when you were just oh man, I love this genre specifically?
Oh yeah, I've been in love with the horror movie genre since I was a little kid. That was my first thing, was monsters. I loved Universal monsters, and there was so I grew up in St. Louis, and there was a syndicated station, Channel 13. It was just it was not a it wasn't it was just a local channel, and it was pure syndicated content. And I saw some amazing stuff on there, frankly. I saw the Lone Wolf and Cub movies on there. That was my first exposure to Japanese culture. And, it just kind of left me speechless. Wow, they have a really different culture back in the old days of Japan there. And, I was 5 or 6 when I saw that movie, and it's Chanbara films. It's like guys getting like ridiculously cut apart and blood spraying everywhere. It just totally freaked me out. And there was like, so that was like a rare occasion. They would have like a samurai movie sometimes, but most of the time on Saturday mornings they would have a monster movie. So like after watching, Bugs Bunny, they just kept rerunning the same Bugs Bunny cartoons over and over again when I was a kid. So if it was like a rerun that I had already seen before, I'd switch over to 13 and I'd watch a monster movie. And I was just always wanting to see monster movies. Like I wanted to go see Alien when I was a little kid and went and saw it. That was the last R-rated movie I ever saw, by the way.
Oh, really?
After that, my parents were like, no more R-rated movies for you. So, so like that was the last one I saw until I was an adult, or until I was like in high school at least. Just a lifelong fascination with like horror and the unknown. And then when it became video games, of course, I was like, oh yes, because to be part of like an immersive experience where like monsters are attacking you and stuff like that, like where you're literally just going through the haunted house over and over again. I just thought that was awesome that you could like have that sort of experience with a computer game. That's totally why I got into like Resident Evil and Silent Hill and those kind of games like that, and some of those point.
That's awesome.
Adventures. Yeah, I love horror movies and horror games.
Yeah, man. Because that's the thing too. It's like there's so much, especially Romero. There's so much Romero in the Resident Evil games. Like so much from Night, Dawn, and Day of the Dead. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
How much influence? Even the movies too. Like the Resident Evil movies that just took stuff from the Romero films. So it's crazy how it all kind of goes back to that time that we're kind of talking about in like the 90s when gaming was starting to really take a turn and survival horror was being, really a big thing, and people were starting to recognize that. And, there's so much memories that go into that. And I think that's why here with our community, we always talk about, the times with the guidebooks and the games and just like the memories that we always share with the movies or the games, because there's always just that, like, again, it seems like everyone can always relate to that snapshot in time with that stuff. And I think that's why we still talk about them to this day. We never stop talking about them because all the stuff that we love, it's cool that now with stuff like YouTube and forums and Discord and all the stuff the internet has kind of gave us access to people that all feel the same way or have the same experiences and share the same stories.
Mm-hmm. I think it's amazing that you guys want to talk to me, like, 20 years after I wrote these books. I think it's amazing that you guys still like Resident Evil. I mean, I understand that they just came up with the remakes, and I wouldn't be surprised if like the remakes like generated this interest. But you guys are like into the old games. You guys like really the old 2D, shifting camera angle games.
I was getting nightmares of them when I was little, and I used to lie to my parents and tell them turkeys were attacking me so they wouldn't take them away.
So they wouldn't take away the games. Like, it wouldn't be
even though zombies were chasing me and liquors, and I used to lie to them when I was little. I remember buying an ugly ass Leon's face, bro, the toy with the liquor, at Big Lots. And I had 3 of that Leon, and I would play Leon, and Leon. I'd just be like, these are my Leons. I had so much merchandise because my parents didn't fucking care.
Right.
So like when I was 5, I literally have home video of me at 4 years old in 1997 playing Mortal Kombat 2.
Oh, wow.
And kicking the shit out of the adults because it was all I would do.
Awesome.
I would just it's just so great.
I was terrible at that game. Mortal Kombat 2, I was terrible at. I was terrible.
I'm still bad at it. That game's really hard. That's like one of the most challenging MKs. I'm not good at.
I
MK2.
love 2. I'm so good.
I
at
can
2.
play like 4, and I can play like 3, maybe Ultimate 3, but 2 is just like brutal.
Yeah, I love 2.
Just trying to beat that on like a ladder on normal is impossible.
I'm a scorpion reptile player in 2, and I love that.
Oh,
game.
I've seen you work that stuff. You
I can
dirty with the
still
combos.
pick the game up and just like go at it.
Yeah, oh my God. Mortal Kombat 2 was so much better than 1, and I played the crap out of that game. I think I had it on, I'm trying to remember which system I played it on. Dadgum. Oh, I think on a Genesis. So I had the Genesis. So I had the Genesis port of Mortal Kombat 2. And it was actually a pretty good port. The Genesis usually had crappy ports. And that was a really, really, really challenging game. I think I only finished like 1 ladder.
Oh
Yeah,
it's
it was
just
really hard. But I
challenging.
loved it. It was so much better than the first game. Big improvement. That was a great game.
All right, Dan Birlew, we have something very special for you.
Oh, wow.
We are going to hit you with the rapid fire round.
Oh, boy.
This is where we're going to ask you a series of randomly generated questions from our brains, and you just give us the best answer you can as quick as possible.
Okay.
Some of them will be easy. Some of them may make you make a lot of sounds in a row, and then give us an answer.
Oh, man.
Green. Yeah, so we're going to hit you with some rapid fire. I'm going to ask a question, you answer it. Anthony asks you a question, you answer it.
Okay.
And we're just going to go from there, all right?
Okay.
All right, are you ready?
I think I am.
Favorite season?
Of the year? Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, definitely fall.
Favorite book?
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick.
Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite movie?
Movie? Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh,
That's a good one.
that's
Dream car. What's your dream car?
I'm not real big on cars, and I have a Honda Civic, and I love it. That's kind of my dream car at the moment.
you might have already answered this. I'm not sure, but favorite game of all time?
Of all time, I'd say I've probably played Tetris more than any other game. So I mean, it literally could be my favorite game of all time. Second favorite, probably Minecraft. Just based on the number of years that I've been playing the same game in a row.
Wow.
What is your favorite soda?
I mean, the one that there's the sodas that I will drink. I think my favorite is probably kind of gross. I love like the A&W cream soda.
Dr. Pepper cream soda is good too.
Oh, I haven't tried it. No, I haven't tried it.
Dr. Slepper, man.
Dr. Pepper's good, man.
Nope.
I don't know.
Dr. Perky's where it's
We
at.
usually drink Mountain Dew on the channel, so
Yeah. With this,
the ongoing
we're
joke.
drinking Voodoo right now from Mountain Dew.
Yeah, that's the holiday edition of Mountain Dew.
Two more questions.
Okay.
This other one is: what is your favorite film adaptation that's based off of a book?
Ooh.
That's mostly. Stephen King jumps to my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
It's usually that's probably going to be one of the answers.
I really liked it. You'll never capture the terror that I felt reading that novel and the images that were in my head. But the recent It did a really, really, really good job of getting pretty close.
Yeah, that was a good one. I didn't see part 2 yet, but I like part 1.
Oh, part 2 is definitely really good.
Yeah, and now that's out on 4K, I got to check that out.
Yeah, and it's much closer to the original. They still can't do that one scene though from the book.
Yes, of course. No running trains on the big screen.
That can't happen.
No, that can't happen.
Yeah.
Final question for you, which just kind of derailed into an unrapid fire round. But the final question for you I have. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I think.
Are fixed camera angles the best way to experience Resident Evil?
Yeah, I totally think so.
Yeah.
Did you see how many dislike buttons we just got?
Yeah. They'll be like, oh, they all agree on the same thing.
I love Dan Birlew, and then after watching this video, I hate him.
Sorry if you hate me.
No.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Resident Evil, I don't. I'll be honest with you. I as much as I loved playing Resident Evil 4, there are sections of it that I could not recall, like those twitchy things, the tall twitchy things that come at you.
Generators.
Thank you. Yeah. Like,
Iron Maidens.
I completely forgot about those until somebody shared a screenshot of one of those on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh yeah, there was a whole section of the game with those I completely forgot about. So there are sections of like and like I also said, I can't even remember half of Resident Evil 6. But when I was going back through and playing the remakes on 2 and 3, I could remember what they had taken that from in the original Resident Evil 2 camera angle by camera angle. I could remember those camera angles.
Yep.
they just like would pop right into your face. You're like, oh, that's the 3D version of that camera angle I used to stop in the left corner of and aim off screen because I knew there was a zombie there. Yeah, it was going to walk into the shot at any time now. Yeah,
that's I mean, just real quick, I really want to know this. Like, what didn't do it for you for the 2 and 3 like remake? Like, what was it? Was it the fact that it wasn't like the fixed camera? Like, it just didn't have that vibe, or was there like, anything in particular that you could think of?
Oh, I thought that. So in 2, I was really excited that they had like the different opening at the gas station. Because I thought they were kind of tying it to Resident Evil 3 a little bit, but then, like, after that, I just wasn't scared anymore. In fact, I was more frustrated, like, especially that fight where you're with the swinging train car. Oh, my God, that was frustrating. I quit the game. I quit the game for, like, months and didn't go back to it because of that. And I didn't even... you know what, to this day, I don't even think I've played the B scenario of Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. So it was the fear that wasn't there that kind of turned you off to the game and some of the challenge that was like frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, as pretty as it was, it's missing something that they captured like lightning in a bottle with Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. As bad as the I mean, you can point to like all the things that were bad about Resident Evil 1 or
I
Resident
think
Evil 2.
this was the most important part.
Wow.
I'm going to give this to you, Jill, the master of unlocking things.
Yeah. No, Dan, everybody knows that the worst line in Resident Evil history is when Chris examines the piano and Rebecca walks in the room in Resident Evil 1. And she goes, "It's me, Chris." And he goes, "Is that you, Rebecca?"
Yeah, that was hilarious.
It's literally the worst dialogue.
It's like,
ever.
Chris, you could see her. You clearly know it's Rebecca. Like, come on.
Also, he's a highly trained officer that was handling terroristic threats to the city. And he lived in Raccoon City for at least, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, 2 months. And Rebecca goes, "This is made by Umbrella." And he goes, "What's Umbrella?" It's like, really, Chris?
It's like, come on.
Come on, Chris. It's on the billboards.
Don't play dumb. Maybe he's just playing dumb cop to try to see if she'll...
Yeah.
Maybe he thought she was like an agent. He's like, oh, I bet she's an Umbrella agent. I can get her to give it up. If I just trick her into it, I'll
She's
just play
undercover,
dumb.
I know.
Yeah, she's one of them.
Can I practice, Chris? Can I? Just relax and play.
And you gotta leave for like 5 or 10 minutes until she's ready.
Or if you remember at the end of RE1 when you're Jill and Barry unfortunately doesn't survive and he dies up at the right before you go up the ladder to go out to the helipad.
You get the bad ending.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you get the bad ending, but you save Chris, and Chris is like, he steps forward after Barry collapses, and he goes, "My God!"
It's just like the most like unfazed Chris. Then you get like after seeing his squad mate and friend of years, just his old partner.
His old partner.
Yeah.
And then the file that Barry gives you, Barry's picture where he says, "You will grow up to be strong and beautiful women. Your father will always watching you from heaven."
Your father will always watching you from
always,
heaven.
always watching you from heaven.
It's just it's supposed to be like this serious like death scene, and it's just not. It's just not. It tried. It really tried.
I got clumsy.
Oh man.
But I'm just glad you appreciate the old ones like we do.
When they remade for the GameCube and the bad dialogue. Well, they tried to fix all the bad dialogue, I guess. That's when it started losing something. Like the bad dialogue, because there's bad dialogue in horror movies. And
it's supposed to be a B movie.
Yeah. It was so cool. I thought it was cool how it was like a badly made horror movie. And it was almost like I even kind of questioned, like the first time I played, I was like, was that on purpose?
Yeah.
Investigate if you hear any gunfire.
I still think Remake, like from GameCube, is like the best remake that we got out of the 3 because I think it did everything. It kept the same exact style. Like I don't want to speak for all the fans, but us as the fans when RE2 was coming out, we heard of it being developed, we wanted it to be like Remake with those camera. We're so like, it's got to be in fixed camera angles. And then when we had to accept that it was over the shoulder, and we were just like, okay, I guess now we'll just see how they can make it work.
Yeah.
But it just didn't. Yeah, I think we all agree here that just didn't really do it.
I don't think they lived up.
full.
I have this video idea that I want to do one day, and I'm going to keep pushing it off until I eventually do it. But
Eventually.
I definitely want to explore what the spirit of Resident Evil is, because I feel like after 3, arguably after Code Veronica, the spirit becomes something completely different, and that carries into the remake and into the remakes.
Yeah, they definitely, they were trying to make the remakes into Resident Evil 4. They've with the whole, I just feel like they keep trying to do Resident Evil 4 over again.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, because they're remaking Resident Evil 4. So
Yes, they are.
they're finally going to be giving you what you want.
Well, are they going to use fixed camera angles? I would love it. I would love Resident. I mean, that's the only way they could.
If only
fix
we got
it.
the RE4 Hookman edition.
Yeah, but this time you'll be able to save the dog, Dan.
Oh, awesome. Good. Yes.
Take him out of the bear trap.
Well, hopefully they don't change it.
They don't change it. That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all we really have for you. I think
Awesome.
as a closing statement, providing us with some of the insight on what it was like writing some of these guides and where you're coming from with a lot of the thing.
This was great.
I think this was great. I think it was my favorite interview so far that I've done.
This is the favorite interview
awesome.
I've ever done.
I do
100%.
want to come clean and say that in the past, I have been hypercritical of you.
The books.
and there has been some times that I was like, man, fuck Dan Birlew.
You know
And
what?
I think even in our tour guide, our studio tour, I say it as a joke. I'm like, because Dustin's like going through his strategy guides, and I'm like, and I just call out in the back, I'm like, fuck Dan Birlew, because of all the fake, I call it the fake stuff you put in the guidebook. But now it's very clear that it wasn't you making things up.
Right.
Yeah.
And
well,
I think
except when I did make things up.
Exactly.
But I'm happy to say that we were trying to pad page count. We were trying to fill out. We were trying to connect.
It was entertainment, like you said.
It was entertainment. And I have to be honest.
Entertainment purposes.
I have to be very honest. I have to come clean for the Let's Talk Resident Evil community. Dan Birlew has earned my respect.
Oh, awesome.
And I will no longer, except for when I do, say fuck Dan Birlew. Because he is a man of high class. He is the man, the myth, the legend. And like I told you on the phone, Dan, I'm still going to buy all your guides. So
Yes, no matter what.
No matter
Thanks,
what's
guys.
extrapolated or not, you will always be the man who has been on our shelves since we were basically preteen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Literally preteens.
Yeah, because for me, like my dad got me into gaming, and he would always buy the guides with the games, like always. So like that was like my
Yeah,
introduction.
me
to a
too.
lot of that
My
stuff.
parents too.
Yeah.
They would always get the guides because they like to look at the pictures and stuff.
Right, yeah. It was just a part of that experience and a part of the vivid memories that we have for these games that will last a lifetime.
Dan Birlew did nothing wrong. Changed my mind. He did nothing wrong. That should be the thumbnail, the meme.
Yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, it was always lighthearted. I think. I don't really think
we've never been.
we
We're
can't hold
not
you-
toxic people in the community.
No, we're not
try not
toxic
to be.
people.
I wouldn't have taken. I would have laughed.
If I was
laughed.
really toxic, I wouldn't have just told you that.
I mean, that kind of goes along with my sense of humor. I mean,
Right.
It's like, man, who the fuck wrote this guidebook? Opens it up. Oh, it was me.
Yeah.
Let me go get the guidebook. He's hanging out with us one day. He's like, let me go get the guidebooks, kids. And he like walks over and he grabs it and he's like, enhanced online. Where's the website?
Where's the rest of the guidebook?
Where's the rest of the book? That's what I've been asking for all these years. Where is the rest of the book? Now you can't even get the whole book I wrote.
No,
Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah,
It's
that's
crazy.
a
I'm
lost
gonna.
thing
You
now.
know what? I have to send you something, Dan, to get you to sign it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And it's gonna be the Final Fantasy IX strategy guide. He's gonna sign it, but he's only gonna sign half of his name.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Just Dan.
That's perfect.
Dan.
Stand on it.
But
Dan.
yeah, man, thank you so much for
Yeah,
being
thank
a
you,
part of
man.
this.
Thank you for so much
podcast.
for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure, and I
fun.
hope, which we'll talk about this after the podcast, but I have an idea I want to run by you because I hope you'll return to the channel one day.
Yeah, definitely got to do part 2.
Yeah,
I'm
part 2 would
subscribed,
be
guys.
great.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And hopefully we can get that. We can get Dan Birlew to kickstart a new strategy guide.
We're gonna try to do that.
gotta try.
We're not gonna let that go until it happens.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. As far as I want you to plug your YouTube channel real quick and where people can find you on social media.
Cool. Yeah, I'm on YouTube as Duty Boy. That's my Minecraft channel, and some other content is there too. I'll probably record other different kind of content, and I'll probably stream. And I'm on Twitch as the Duty Boy, _Duty Boy, and I'm on Twitter as Duty Boy. And I'd say those are my gaming friendly feeds. So
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Dan, doing business with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.